Frederick Smith Secondary School and to St. James Peak. I am no longer St. James resident, but I was born just up the hill and I spent most of my life over in Spitz Village. So the first time I voted in St. James. So I'm never leaving St. James technically. So I'm qualified to welcome you, even if I don't live here. Tonight is your night to represent yourself, to represent your parish. If there are any issues at all, regardless of what those issues are, feel free to raise them. You have here so far the Prime Minister and the MP for St. James North, but you should also, if you recognize some of them, a number of state entities. The senior people from those ministries are here, and there's still more to come. So whatever the issue is, we will endeavor to respond to you positively tonight, and we expect you to speak freely. All we ask is that no matter how emotional the matter may be, that you have, you give deference to the other people around you, allow them to speak, and as well, try not to speak too long, because as has happened in the last couple events, we were going until well after the time allotted. So we want to be able to manage it tonight. So make your point, but make it as quickly as possible. At this stage, I will turn over to the Prime Minister, and she will go from here.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Let me first of all give you an especially warm thank you for coming out in this weather. And I know that those of you who have come understand the importance of this exercise. The truth is we had to make decisions whether to cancel or not, but the Meteorological Office indicated that we would have that sharp shower late afternoon, but that it should clear up at least until the early hours of the morning again. I don't think that we have to say any more than the fact that this has been a very rainy week and that we are beginning to see signs of things that I thought I only saw in Miami and Jamaica in terms of the convection, rain in the afternoon and the extreme heat. But today is the very day that we have become the first country in the world to sign on to the Resilience and Sustainability Fund of the International Monetary Fund, which for the first time gives us access to long-term capital, relatively long-term, given what they normally lend, 20-year money with a 10.5-year moratorium at 2% in order for us to fight the battles that we have to continue to fight with respect to climate. I am conscious that I have two members of Parliament who are on their way and will be here within minutes, but I've asked to start because I don't want to keep those of you who have braved the weather and have come out today any later than you need to be. And I am equally, again, thank you, and conscious that I also have public servants here who accept that the redefinition of democracy in the third decade of the 21st century means that we have to engage with people, and that this is our effort at so doing and ensuring that the government as a whole can be responsive to the citizens whom it represents, and that the wider issues, even at the granular level, can be followed up, not just by those of us who have the political task of leading ministries, but those also who have equally the task of executing policy on a day-to-day basis. So I do not take their presence for granted, and I thank them for being here. If I may, as Roy said, because we've gone late the last few sessions, the last two in particular, I want to open the floor straight off and to allow those who are here to get the baton going. And let us start St. James Speaks. Thank you. Just give us name, and you will notice that you will see me write and Roy writing, and it is because even beyond tonight, those things that cannot be resolved tonight, we follow up assiduously with Mr. Morris as the Director of Citizens Engagement, and with people who write my office each and every day. Okay? So, thank you.
take it out or? All right, good night, everybody.
Good night.
I hope everybody gets home safely after this, yeah? Good night, Mom. Good night to everybody else. My name is Ross Farley. I live in, you can hear me properly?
Well, what's the name, sorry?
Ross Farley. I live in Bagatelle Terrace, St. James. I come representing the neighborhood. I spoke to a couple of my neighbors yesterday and they asked me to come and speak. Unfortunately, my mother wasn't able to make it here because of one of the things I came to spoke about, which I think you saw. Yeah, right. The four things we want to speak about tonight. The first one is the flooding. I recently turned 31, and for more than the 31 years I've been here, the neighborhood is flooded. It's gotten increasingly worse over the years, and one of the reasons for that is in the same corner that you would have seen, one of our neighbors has built his wall to shut off. Yeah, he shut off there was probably 15 years ago, there was a guttering, it was about 4 feet wide that would allow the water to go down into the dump. And he built his wall to cover that. And now we haven't been able to take the water off. There are 2 grills that were built, but they can't handle the water that comes from Redmonds Village all the way to St. Thomas off the highway. We get everything coming down, right? So as a matter of fact, over the years, we've had people that almost drowned in the apartments in the back because the water would get so high. So it's a real serious issue. Also, because of the flooding, sometimes it lasts 2-3 days. If there was an ambulance that needed to get into that neighborhood, they wouldn't be able to. People flooded in, we can't get out to work. It's a real serious issue that I know the Barbados Water Authority has tried to reason with him to get him to allow them to build the guttering, but the neighborhood is frustrated. The neighborhood is really frustrated.
Yeah.
Right?
I want to thank you, Mr. Farley, because even before anybody complained to me about this area, about a year ago in driving through, I saw a garbage can
It's probably mine.
fill in the
Yeah.
broken hole.
Yeah.
And I called MTW at the time and asked them to go in. The Deputy Prime Minister has joined us, and we thank her for joining us. The reality is that I do know that the drainage unit has gone down there, but clearly what they've done is not sufficient to stop the problem.
It
yet.
wasn't them. They've done a good job. They've
Yeah.
actually done a fantastic job with
And
the
that's the
drainage.
point I'm making.
Yeah.
So that your clarification for me tonight of the issue with respect to the blockage that has taken place is something that I will ask MTW and the drainage unit to go and investigate and to let us know. Because at the end of the day, the reason why we have a government is to solve problems for the public good. And therefore, if we have a situation that imperils people's lives, as you have suggested,
Yeah.
or that imperils people's property, then we have a responsibility to see how best we can deal with it, including having perhaps more robust discussions with all of the residents of the neighborhood
Definitely.
to make sure that we can deal with it. Yesterday, we were also in another part of St. James, and we saw that there was an attempt to nail onto the concrete plywood that blocked the drains, and it was perhaps done with a good intention because the people didn't want the garbage, and that's why we keep telling people, let us not litter, let us not throw garbage, because garbage becomes a problem to others. Hi, Sandra, I made the excuses already, thanks. So that we are aware that there are sometimes things that happen in communities that may disrupt the orderly flow of water, and that's one of the reasons town planning perhaps takes a little longer in Barbados than in most other countries, because they also have a view and take a view on those things that will either prevent flooding or regrettably contribute to flooding. So I think the Deputy Prime Minister, as I said, is here. She was actually in the car ahead of us in the bus yesterday. You saw that there was a car next to the bus where you saw us?
I was in the house. I can come out the way you saw
Right.
in the corner.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So she was in the car closer to your house,
Yeah.
and we were in the bus. And she had to turn around as well too. So I don't think anyone needs to tell you, Santia, about it. And I think you've heard Mr. Farley about the problems with the possible blockage of the walls. Kerry, we started because I don't want to keep people late tonight given the weather. And I made the excuses for you all. So that if we can get in there and have a more robust conversation, Santia, and bring the community together, bring the engineers together, and if we have to go outside of government's engineers as well, let us do so. Even though Old Town had some problems today, it is nowhere near in the vicinity of what it might otherwise have been had we not solved it. And this may not mean a lot to most of you, but we have a chief meteorological officer who keeps us up to date now with the technology that he has put in a couple times a day, far less every night. And one of the things he said to me, because we now have water level radars, and he sent me the graphs this afternoon, and that he said that the water in the Old Town Canal really only rose by 2 feet, which is unusual because it would have risen by far, far more had we not done the work up before, and then the other work that USAID had been helping us with here in Old Town, as you saw, with the ability to be able to take some of the water. But with the level of water that we had this afternoon, on top of, we had 4 inches in Old Town of water. That's crazy. That's crazy within the time frame that it came. And we also had in St. Lucie 30 millimeters in 30 minutes. So one of the things that I'm trying to get Barbadians also to appreciate is that water will build up with that intensity of rainfall. The question is, will it run off quickly? And if it doesn't run off quickly, like in your instance where it can last for 2 and 3 days, or where it lasts for 8 and 10 and 12 hours, then we have a problem. But we would expect that any level of serious intensity of rain, the water can build up. That's the truth. But will it run off quickly? So I thank you, Mr. Farley and DPM. I know that you and your officers who are here will follow up for us on this. Thank you.
Yeah.
You said you had another matter. Sorry.
Just two
yeah,
more.
Yeah, that's fine.
So what also adds to the issue is that it's supposed to be only for the sanitation trucks to come through that part of the neighborhood, but we have much larger vehicles coming through and damaging the grills that would actually do for the runoff of the water, and they damage the road pretty badly. So then you have this cycle where MTW would come through, they'll put down a little asphalt, and then the rain comes through at a high level, washes it down, it goes down the drill, it brings down all the sediment. The trucks destroy the grill again, and then we have this consistent issue. And then the thing is like, the other part of that neighborhood is, we have kids in the neighborhood, but they don't come outside because people speed through, including the trucks. Right? I've almost been hit a couple of times. My neighbor's car got written off by somebody hitting it. So these are serious issues because everybody uses it as a shortcut. If you come from the north or you come from the, everybody cuts through.
What do you recommend instead?
We used to have humps. And
so you want back humps again?
We want back humps. We need at least another grill further up, closer to where you guys put the roundabout next to the gas station. There at least needs another grill up there. We need humps. And the last two things is more security issue. Recently, one of our neighbors got robbed at gunpoint, right? 4 guys came in the house with guns. That neighborhood only has lights in certain parts of it.
You need more street lights.
Need more street lights, a lot more street lights, because once you pass where I live... And
here's the deal. I want us to go through and talk to the residents, Kerry, because street lights are a welcome thing for most people, but there are some people who also will object. So we just need to keep everybody on board and to let everybody know that we're doing this for the greater good, that it is always easier for a person to put dark out curtains and be safe than to have no lights and people be at risk. But I don't want, in the same way that we've come here to consult with you, I don't want us to make decisions on the community without consultation with the members of the community. So I'm
Understood.
going to ask the Member of Parliament to meet with you all, settle on the humps, settle on the lighting, and then, Santia, your ministry can proceed. I think the third thing should be a simple prohibition of vessels of a certain weight.
We have it.
Of vehicles of a certain weight.
Is 2 tons.
I am done. They got too much cameras about the place. And we can find cameras to put up so that we're in a position of capturing the license numbers for all those people who want to break the law with impunity. You understand? And I've insisted that we need to use the technology where available. And this is a perfect area where you have a high pole with the cameras, a number of them, and that we are in a position to capture at different points where people least expect it, that they've gone through. If you are prepared to break the law, then be prepared to pay whatever the consequences are for breaking the law for moving through there. Yeah?
No problem. And that pretty much sums it up then.
Thank you. So,
Yeah,
Kerry,
man.
you and Mr. Farley will think, and then let the DPM know when you're ready. Yes, who's next? Come, who's next? Mr. Farley, I want to thank Mr. Farley for coming, doing your business, and go on and do what you got to do. That's how democracy is supposed to work. Lord bless you.
Good evening, Madam Prime Minister and other members of Parliament. My name is Limbrook Kamabach. I live in Ashton Hall in St. Peter, and I'm here to represent the residents of Ashton Hall, or to speak on their behalf, the residents of Ashton Hall and the WIM. Now we have two. The first one is not very unique, but it is really something that we are very concerned with, and that's the quality of roads in Ashton Hall. They are really, really bad. We have to change suspension parts very often, and these roads would be Millionaire Road. Unfortunately, persons, when they come through that road, smile because it is called Millionaire Road, and that is not supposed to happen in Millionaire Road. Then there's Reservoir Road, and there's Graves Road, as well as Corbins Road and Clark's Road. Clark's Road is an important route in that it takes traffic off Highway 2 or Ronald Map Highway to Spikestown. That is a very popular road, but it's very, very bad. All the roads in Ashton Hall.
You don't have to tell me. I used to have a very close friend who regrettably is no longer with us.
Okay.
His name is Barry Downs.
Yes, I know Barry.
You understand? So I know up in the little bit. The truth is that, look, I'm not even going to fool you, thank you. The DPM will tell you. We inherited a situation where roads, for the most part in this country, had been ignored for 9 out of the 10 years. That's the fact. And in the last year, before the last government changed, roads started to do, but even with the best will in the world, what they did was to start and leave, it was the IDB road program, and they started some of the residential roads and the CAF, but it was very limited. The government has had, and perhaps one of the largest amounts of funding that we have for anything is roads. But the scale of the number of roads that we have to do is huge. So this gentleman took me up in there late last year, and we have asked MTW to address some of them. Yesterday we did Rock Dundo as well in Sion Hill, Sion Hill, Tenantry Road, no? But they're different ones. So the Tenantry Roads we will deal with, Asante will tell you, separately from the main arteries and the main highways. You're going to get some relief.
Okay.
But you can't get all one time. They're not fooling you, because what you are reporting to me and to us here, multiply it by 30 constituencies. Swear to God. But what is the good news is that we've identified funding from CAF, the second CAF Roads project. For those in the Scotland district, we've identified funding, as you know, from the Chinese, and those have now started as well, the Chinese government. And we have the residential roads program as well. And then the main highways like Carmichael Road in St. George and up by Searles, that is the Inter-American Development Bank road program. So between all of those, and then I've asked the Ministry of Public Works to put together a list of equipment for what we call the Rail Tenantry Roads program.
Okay.
The one when it's set up like this, when people got to walk with 2 pairs of shoes and plastic bag, or people at risk of stumping the toe because they have lived forever in communities that have never seen any kind of paved road at all. And we believe that we have 13 depots, yeah? And if we can assign 6 teams, that as we do the big roads, we don't forget the small roads where people live.
Okay.
But your issue, to the best of my knowledge, isn't only roads too, it's also drainage, correct?
Yes, yes.
That's what I thought. So they're also looking at, Mr. Yerwood isn't here yet, is he? They're also looking at the drainage issues.
Okay.
As I call his name, he now walked through the door. So Mr. Yerwood was with us last year when we went up in Ashton Hall, and therefore I know that they will continue to follow through on this. Santi, do you want to add anything to it? You good?
Finally, just one last point I want to raise, and it has to do with the zoning of land in Ashton Hall and the Wim. Now, we have lots of land in Ashton Hall and the Wim, but most of it is in bush. The reason for that is that it's a Zone 1 area. All the land is owned by small, owners, but it's a lot of land because there are many owners. I know sometime last year I heard that there's going to be a regrading of the zones in Barbados, and I'm appealing to you, Madam Prime Minister, to consider Ashton Hall and the Wim, even if it is at the point where you can allow one home to go on a plot, because these areas are overrun with bush. The owners are no longer interested in these plots. But we have a land crisis in Barbados. I believe if some persons can probably put a house on each lot, we're just asking for one house on a lot. I believe that would help with the land crisis, and it would help to control the bush in Ashton Hall and the Wim. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, Mr. Cumberbatch. I'll ask the DPM as well to maybe update us on the zoning legislation. And then I'll add to that, because I had some interesting meetings with the Gates Foundation last week when I met with Bill Gates and them. And we'll go from there. Please. Santi? I suggest that you stay there too, because I feel that tonight there'll be a lot of water infrastructure.
Good evening to you, everyone. Just to say that we've been working on the water reuse legislation, both Minister Simmons and myself, through the BNSA and the ministry, in particular Barbados Water Authority, on the zoning legislation. We've had to look not only at introduction of the legislation, but also how are we going to practically get people to look at the issues of plumbing codes when the legislation actually comes into effect. And so the teams have been meeting. We have the draft legislation. If you look on the Parliament website, you will see the draft of the legislation. But we wanted to make sure that we also had the water protection zones also sorted. And so the teams have been examining that. We've had to go back and to add a few zones. I believe in the next few weeks we will be able to complete that with a view to being able to bring that to Parliament. But there's a lot of other work that has to go on behind the scenes to make sure that when we bring the legislation, that we can give effect to bring relief to a number of the persons who've been affected in the Zone 1 areas. We want people to be able to clearly identify where the zones are, be clear as to exactly what they can do, what is the permitted uses in those particular zones. I hear the cry for being able to have one house on the land, but I think you can appreciate that obviously we are trying to protect the groundwater supply. And so they have been very careful in being able to identify what we can do in particular areas so as to stop the contaminants from being able to go into the groundwater. So that is coming very soon. I'm hoping before the end of the year, but the truth of the matter is we want to make sure that we have that information in terms of the clear demarcation of all of the zones going forward, so that when we launch that, the public is clear as to what are the permitted uses across the country.
Thank you. And the truth is that in 1965, the year I was born, the Cabinet of Barbados settled the rules, and it was based on biological contamination and how long water would take to move. Since then, we all know that chemical contamination is as great or greater than biological contamination. And to that extent, that is why the Water Authority has taken the lead in pushing government on these issues. I regret that this thing started from as far back as 2007. And it has taken us as long, and it represents everything about how we have to change our system of governance, because it takes simply too long to do these things. I've gone further, and I'm sorry that Dr. Seeley is no longer alive, because he, more than any other person, would have heard me on these issues. There has to be technological solutions in the 21st century, third decade, to deal with some of these issues that we are still fighting up with. And last week, I haven't even had the chance to discuss it with the Water Authority people since returning, but we're discussing with the Gates Foundation and others the work that they have done and the research that they have brought to the market from others that look at how we can protect our water resources and by having safer sanitation. And there may be some solutions. It's a little early to talk about, but suffice it to say that the government is in active discussion to see how we can find solutions that will unlock, Mr. Kamabach, the potential of the land that regrettably has been allowed to lay idle as a result of the circumstances that we have. Okay? Thank you.
Hi, good night, Prime Minister Motley, all other government officials. I'm Kimberly Strawn from Porters St. James. I'm really here tonight just seeking a very simple clarification regarding masking in schools, particularly for kids under the age of 5. So in previous directives, and as per the guidelines of the Ministry of Education, kids were required to mask on school campus, now just indoors only. But as of the Gazette published, dated September 22nd, the actual legal wording has changed somewhat. It says, if you read section 3 of the official Gazette, 3.1, no person shall without reasonable explanation, D, be in a school or other educational institution unless he wears a face mask which covers his nose, mouth, and chin. So school is one of the places that the mask mandate has remained. However, subparagraph 3.5 goes on to say that all above subparagraphs 1 to 3 shall not apply to children under 5 years of age. So it's been my experience with 2 small kids as well too, that kids have been made to mask indoors at school. My main issue with this is masking at school, particularly under a certain age group, to me constitutes further learning loss, which these kids already have borne the brunt of. They've had online school. I mean, you could see my son here, he could barely sit still for this meeting. Online school was basically no school. They've lost a lot of learning. And a good example I used for somebody the other day is even yourself, in the midst of the pandemic, when you had an important speech to make to other people, you took your mask off because that is the most effective way to communicate with others. Now imagine a classroom situation where you have a masked teacher, a masked 4-year-old. There's really not a lot of effective communication going on there. And as the class rep for my class, the teachers have been expressing the same thing, that particularly in that age group, it's really difficult. I mean, not to mention the fact that the masks are not worn effectively anyway. The kids still come home with cold, flu, hand, foot, and mouth every other week anyway as it is. My clarification is that if this directive is clearly now stating that kids under 5 are exempt even in the school compound, why is it that they're still being forced to mask at that age? I will leave off for now why the mask mandate extends to all schools, because I really don't think that it is mostly a health and safety matter, the reason that has been kept as it has. I do hope and think that that's going to be reviewed very closely or very soon, because not just for this age, I do think it's kind of unfair to the kids that they have been held to a different standard than adults throughout most of the pandemic. And right now, they really deserve as normal a possible learning experience. But main point of my question, if legally it's stated that those under 5 are exempt, how can they be then forced to mask in school continually? I sent an email to you yesterday, you may see.
Put a face to the... We good? Yes. I did get your email, thank you. I apologize.
I got a copy.
I didn't respond immediately, but
That's all right.
the clear terms of the directive says that children under 5 are exempt.
Yeah,
So there's absolutely no ambiguity at all.
agreed.
Children under 5 are exempt. Unfortunately, I think in reading our directive, and in your instance, you referred to previous directives.
Yeah.
And I can only say to you that as lawyers, the Prime Minister, myself, Kerry, well, not Sandra, but Eddie, we have to follow the literal rule first. So when there's a clear line that says children under 5 are exempt, that's the answer to all of your questions.
Yeah.
They simply are. So I apologize for not responding to say that.
No problem.
But we're glad to have you here tonight nonetheless. Let me remind you though, Prime Minister, with your permission, the directives are not, and this is not a passing of the buck, because we're in this together, but under our COVID orders and our COVID directives, it is required that the Chief Medical Officer advises us. I'm not a doctor, the Prime Minister isn't. So in every instance, the Chief Medical Officer advises us as to what level of restrictions are required at any given time. So from day one until now, whenever we've prepared a directive, it has been on the best advice of the Chief Medical Officer. At very challenging times, the Prime Minister always took the opportunity to consult also with BAMP and other stakeholders to find a middle ground.
Yeah.
So I can assure you that at every instance, we've prepared directives, taken into account all of the interest groups, but also, more importantly, following the best medical advice at any given time. At this point, we are down to very few restrictions. Masks is one of them. There were people who were saying, well, the directive is ambiguous in relation to optional. And I had to say, well, the word optional doesn't appear in the directive at all.
Yeah.
So that it's open to you to wear a mask tonight if you wish. So I think people tend to get a little anxious, and I can only urge that we, in every instance, look to see exactly what we've written. I hope that answers your question, ma'am.
No, it does, and I do agree with your point, and particularly from a medical standpoint, obviously. I took my grievance first to the Ministry of Health, who I do work closely with as well, too. And I think it is, at this point, there is very little medical evidence for the masking in schools as compared to the rest of the environment. I mean, reading specifically WHO's guidelines on basically COVID restrictions and directives within a school should reflect directly those of the greater population or environment. So to have them be more stringent than the greater environment is really not necessarily in keeping with those larger medical governance bodies' advice. So that would just be my question. As I said, I do hope that for the rest of school-age children, it is reviewed soon. I know that there's a lot of stakeholders in that same engagement, but that does clarify for me. I guess for my own too, I could read the directive as much as I want and tell a principal that it says XYZ, but unless they hear it more officially, people are scared of and also keen to follow what is being told to them. So that does clarify, and I'll take it.
I want to thank you for raising it. I want to thank the Attorney General for the clarification. And I want simply to say that normally the Chief Medical Officer would be here. He has been at all the other meetings, but there are meetings going on with the Caribbean Public Health Agency and the Pan American Health Organization, and both he and the Minister and the PS, in fact, all three of them are out at those meetings representing the country now. What I will say to you is this as well, that those areas that have been left back, on my understanding of it, are areas that they perceive to be higher risk. But I do take your point that, in particular with schools as opposed to nursing homes and prisons, where there is limited movement and greater concentration, because people are either restricted from moving or cannot move, that in schools there's a slightly different variance to those other two. And I know that the CMO is not an adamant man. He's a man that recognizes science, but he also recognizes human behavior. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Prime Minister, other ministers. My name is Peter Thompson. Back in April 2020, Mr. Tony Hoyos, who was on the Jobs and Investment Council, asked me to send you and your economic development team a memo which outlined my idea for a long-term visa for remote workers. You took that idea and implemented it with stunning brilliance, I have to say.
Before you go any further, I need to disavow, because I can tell you the story behind the remote visa, and I don't doubt that Mr. Hoyos dealt with you. I don't even doubt that you submitted it, but the truth is that the digital welcome stamp didn't necessarily come from there. But I am glad that we can find consistency, because great minds obviously think alike, with those who handed me the idea and yourself who was thinking along the same way once there was a prohibition of short-term travel, largely because of the pandemic. But
Okay.
I've continued to enjoy your writings, nevertheless, over the period of time
Well, thank you.
in the newspapers.
And what I want to talk to you about tonight is the fact that we are exploiting perhaps 10% of the potential of this innovation, because we led the world back in 2020, and it was a response to the pandemic, but now it has the potential to be a response to the way the world of work has changed irrevocably. And I wanted to ask you for 15 minutes with Mr. Reid or some other conduit where I could present an analysis which demonstrates.
Easy done, Mr. Thompson. It'll either be next week or week after. So if you just check, but continue with whatever suggestions or comments you want to make. But the lady right there, Navy Blue, my PA, just make sure we can exchange numbers, and I'll give you, and we can meet and discuss that and other ideas, I suspect.
Well, thank you very much. That is the objective of my talking to you. I do want to point out that, as I'm sure you're aware, Thailand and Greece and Spain and everybody else is stealing Barbados's thunder. And this is certainly the largest economic development opportunity that I have seen for Barbados in my 66 years on the planet. And so I really am anxious that we make the very best use of it. Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister.
We'll meet next week. Thank you. Shanda, please.
Madam PM, members, good evening, everyone. My question is simple, I think, compared to the others, and far less weighty.
What's your name, sir?
Glenn Husbands. As a resident of Mount Stanford, I have to use Highway 1 every day.
Glenn, you're looking more like your uncle.
That means I'm getting old, ma'am. What I'm concerned about is the behavior of the public service vehicles on Highway 1. I mean, any time of the day, almost, weekends, easy periods, you're stuck behind 10, 12 vehicles. The public service vehicles pull to the right when they're stopping. They don't pull into the laybys. And what worries me is that the behavior is getting worse. There was one lay-by that they seemed to observe. That was the one almost opposite the Old Town Police Station. Now they seem not even to bother with that one. And what worries me more than everything is that if we can't deal with visible public law breaking, as a citizen, I worry about our ability to deal with the invisible lawbreakers, the ones who operate undercover. And I just can't understand why it is allowed to continue. Am I the only one?
Yes, Mr. Husbands, your concern is not only noted, but sometimes I wish I had a siren in the vehicle when I'm driving that I could pull them over myself. The reality, though, is that we simply do not have enough police officers to deploy constantly on every stretch of every road. It's not just St. James, it is if you're going towards Oystains, just about any road that you're going on, there's a level of lawlessness on the part of PSV drivers. We've had numerous meetings with them. There are a couple of initiatives that we are looking to put in place. We are looking to put in place GPS monitors. We are planning on having a new transport arrangement where, in terms of how they relate to the authority that supervises them, that is the Transport Authority. And I can give you the assurance that we're going to be putting measures in place to deal with that. What we need really is a firmer hand on the PSV drivers. But that is not, while the police can be involved in that, given our resource challenges, we simply can't deploy enough police officers for that purpose. I will say to you that as you drive around Barbados, especially on Highway 1, you will probably have been seeing cameras mounted on poles and so on. And that is an important crime prevention strategy. I can only ask that when you see these things, that you respond to them, because when the police are monitoring cameras, they're not necessarily monitoring for traffic issues like that. They're monitoring for different kinds of criminal activity. But I can tell you my personal experience. Whenever I see a PSV driver in front of me doing foolishness, I take a picture on my phone. I stop first, of course, and I send it to the Transport Authority and begin the process of sensitizing for them the kinds of challenges that we're having. But it's going to involve the Ministry of Public Works that has responsibility for PSV drivers, and working with the law enforcement, we hope to be able to strengthen our responses to that kind of lawlessness. But the most vigilant people for us are going to be people like yourself. When you see it, just take the time to report it to the Transport Authority, because a lot of these things are not necessarily police issues. We would tap a lot of police time stopping a PSV driver and charging him and going through the court process. That's not necessarily desirable. The Transport Authority is the regulatory agency. So when we have PSV drivers who are constantly breaking the rules and regulations, the court system is not the place for them. What is required is for the authority to be authoritative and to revoke the license, revoke the permit and things of that sort to bring discipline. Unfortunately, everybody looks to the police whenever there's a deviation from the norm. That's going back time immemorial. In this instance, with those kinds of minor, important to you, but minor traffic issues, the Transport Authority is the one that we have to look to bring those particular individuals to heel. But just be patient with us, we're going to get it done.
Thanks very much. I was going to sit down, but the Prime Minister on a number of occasions mentioned the use of technology, which seems as though that can offer a solution, GPS and the cameras.
I think, Glenn, you may want to let Santia, the DPM, speak.
Just to add to that I can actually say that I have tried to stop some of the PSV drivers myself and actually scolded them for their behavior. So unlike the AG, I don't know if the Prime Minister put a female in this position to be able to take these harsh actions, but I can tell you, sir, and the public, that the associations have been meeting with the Transport Authority. There have been some discussions with the police as well to try to put in place some regulations to be able to govern the sector. Obviously, in regulations, it is going to require then enforcement. So we're going to have to improve the number of and increase the number of transport inspectors to be able to assist the police officers in the execution of their duties. But it is a concern to us. I think we're all road users. We see the foolishness that is being done on the road sometimes. That's not to say all of them are driving badly, but we recognize that without standards and without enforcement, we're going to end up in a situation where we will continue to see the reckless behavior. So that will be coming very shortly in terms of the regulations, and then meeting with the various PSV operators to go through the rules and the regulations with them as well.
Just a quick suggestion. American Airlines, when it has a problem, doesn't blame the pilot necessarily. There's an owner who they always seem to escape. And we hear people talking about the drivers. I don't honestly think the issue is the drivers. I think the issue is the owners. The other point, just before I sit down, because I don't want to prolong, is that I would love to be able to upload any video from my dash cam to a portal somewhere. I don't know if that is available, or if the public knows where these things can be uploaded, these pictures can be sent along with a caption, but that would be my suggestion. Thanks.
I totally agree with you. That is something that we're working on, but the truth is the ability of us to be able to capture the owner is a very important part of the new regulations that will come on stream. And it is for exactly that reason, because a lot of the focus has been on the driver, but you have a number of people who are invisible in this process, and they own a number of vehicles. They're not taking the time to make sure that people have, that the behaviors are good in terms of on the road. And so we want to obviously extend the responsibility not just on the driver, but also on the owner of the vehicle. So they will be captured under the regulations.
Thank you for raising it, and we go forward. Yes, sir.
Good night. My name is Bakari Bascom, and I am a representative from the Lumber Company Lakers Sports Club basketball team. Yes. Our representative, Ms. Husbands, has come to a number of our games in the last 6 months or so, about since everything got lifted and sports could play again. And we like to thank her for coming. It really warms our hearts and shows that she's showing a big interest in sports in the community. So she asked us, what does the club need? What do we need in the club? What do we need in the community? And I have lived in the Husbands area since I was 9 years old, before I lived in West Terrace. So I could say that I've been in that area my entire life, and that would be the absolute truth. I recently changed my voting constituency to St. George, where I've lived the last 9 years, but I think I can change back. So basically, what we need in the husbands community is, I think we need a multi-purpose sports complex. The number of hours that we lose in sports in Barbados to rainfall is astronomical. So a covered facility would be ideal, but in addition, when you look at how we are performing on the world stage with our limited resources throughout all the disciplines, cycling, athletics, we have numerous athletes on basketball, scholarships, etc. I think that with a community-based sports complex that's open to the community and the nation as a whole, I believe that we will go leaps and bounds in the next 5, 10, 15 years as it relates to sports, and also as it relates to reductions in crime, because sports there are numerous studies on the impact of sports as a deterrent for crime in young men and young women. I have a 11-year-old daughter who's 5'7", and yeah, she wants to play sports, but right now, for girls in sports, nationally, there's not a lot going on, so we're actually going to look to Canada this Christmas. We're going to go up there in the Christmas holidays and towards the start of the new term in Canada and see if we can get her enrolled up there in the future for sports, just because in terms of competition, if you want to be really good, you really got to compete. But, so what we need in husbands, there's a large parcel of land. I don't know the measurements, I don't know how large it is, but it's a pretty big plot of land where the husbands courts is. If you come up from Western School, coming back towards Western Light Church, on the right-hand side where the basketball court is, it recently got rebranded, got painted over. It's a beautiful area. We're trying to get that turned into, this is the area that I have earmarked for the community-based sports center. It would incorporate basketball, indoor football, indoor hockey, netball, have a 200-meter track, have cricket nets, mini cycling velodrome, squash courts, a long jump sand pit, a gym, boxing and mixed martial arts area, a classroom area, I'll tell you about the classroom area in a minute, a physio room, TV screens for watching popular sporting events, a catering area that can be rented out for daily meals. It will be a hurricane shelter. It will have photovoltaic systems on the roof, etc., etc., etc. That's how I envision it.
Mr. Bascom, tell me where you win the lotto.
Right? Madam Prime Minister, they say you got ask big.
No, I agree with you. Look, I call my Minister of Sports to respond to you, because you will understand that what you're doing is setting the gold standard.
Yes.
And we want to get there.
Yes.
But like with everything else in life, there's a process to get in there, because I want to make sure, look at this school. At the end of the day, look at what is in here. Mm-hmm. When Billy Miller was Minister of Education and this school was built, it was intended to be a multi-purpose indoor facility as well. So, but I gotta do what before I could get there? Yes. Right now, the water coming down on my head as I speak it all the time. Oh, so we gotta make sure that we fix the roof.
Yes.
And for those who knew what this school looked like at 1, 2 o'clock with the rain and the pumping of the water that had to be done off at the side, that's our experience on a daily basis. So I absolutely, absolutely support you. Trust me. But as I said, I'm going to let Charles answer, because I think you need to know where we are going and how we intend to get there. But we're going to keep your idea like the North Star and the gold standard.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Mr. Bascom, thank you for the question. I too am trying to get the Minister of Sports to do a similar project at Gore Hill in St. John. working on that. The truth is that we're looking to build a lot of the communities in terms of upgrading the facilities. We have started the lighting program across the country. So several of those playing fields that you would have seen before with light poles that have fallen and lights that are not adequate for what is happening at night, i.e. football and night cricket. We're looking to upgrade all of those. You would have heard us before talk about 85 grounds in Hard Court, as the Prime Minister is pointing out. You would have heard us mention the mini stadium before, that we're looking to put in place across the country as well to benefit communities in terms of being able to stage events at those locations with a cost recovery for the clubs from the specific areas. But there are a couple of things, there are a couple of projects that we're working on that will be deemed to be priority. As everybody in the room is aware, we're looking to get this stadium back into shape for our athletes. So what you're talking about is happening. It is coming on stream. It is good that you have a 5'8" daughter at 11 years old, 5'7", because we need those kind of players not only in basketball but in netball as well. And scholarships are in place. My ministry would have just started a new initiative where the STATS program, the SATs, that students are required to get into colleges. The ministry is now paying for that program. Before, it was a situation where you would have to pay $400 or $600 for your child to be tutored in this particular program. We would have just launched that initiative that is providing that particular service free to all athletes who are interested in sourcing scholarships in the States. So we're gradually working towards what you would like and what I would like at Gore Hill and St. John as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Reverend.
Good evening, Prime Minister.
I know that you can reach the heavens and come back down to the ground.
But good evening, Prime Minister. Good evening, ministers. DPM, this question really is directed at for you. Now, I live in St. James North. Let's begin by saying that. But I have a lot of interest in St. James Central. And over the past couple of years, we have had an issue in St. James Central as it relates to Prior Park, that Prior Park area. I heard Ross speak earlier with respect to the Bagatelle issue, so I wouldn't go there. But Prior Park, for example, Prior Park Terrace and the surrounding areas, the road infrastructure there is ridiculous. I do know that maybe sometime late last year, early this year, we would have seen some patchwork done along that road, which we're thankful for. You know, the residents really appreciate that. But only today, I drove through there. My wife was with me when we drove through there, and all of that patchwork, because of the rainfall, is now beginning to be a problem because it's coming up, it's off the surface now, and it's rolling back down the hill. So we're going back to where we started. That area for me, and certainly for the representative of the area, that is one of our major areas that has been a bugbear for us for a number of years, because even though we're appreciative of all the other work that was done around the constituency, Risk Road and all of that, Prior Park has always been overlooked. And we really need to have that Prior Park area looked at. It has been going on for many years. We lived there in Prior Park for just about a year or so, and the roads were like that when we were there back in early 2000, 2004 or so, 5. It was like that, and it continues to be a problem in that area. And therefore, I am begging the Ministry of Transport and Works to give us a little, as they would say, a little easement.
Sir, I want to assure you that both MPs, Minister Husbands and Minister Simmons, have been bending my ears constantly regarding that road. The road is actually in the IDB Global Roads project. It was
Okay.
one of the identified roads out of, I think, about 9. The challenge, however, is that BWA has to do some replacement of its mains in that area. So every week we meet to discuss the update on the roads. But one of the challenges we have now is that there's a major replacement of the mains. And therefore, we anticipate that we're going to have to, we can't start right away, but we anticipate that hopefully early in the new year, once the BWA has completed its works, that will be able to go out for the contractor to be able to start the work. So 2023, as PM is saying, it will be done.
Fine.
All right?
And finally, since I am from...
I'd like to reinforce what the Deputy Prime Minister has said, because I think that we forget too easily where we're coming from. And I had cause to remind today, as we spoke in the press briefing, we have not had much work done on the replacement of the mains Let's make some more working, please. We've had a lot of work that we've not been able or not seen done. And the government, as I said, took the conscious decision to put the Water Authority on budget to provide $30 million and $35 million each in the last 2 years. And we've had to do that because we are literally running up a hill now trying to play catch up. Brown water in St. Lucie, St. Peter, Prior Park, and elsewhere in the north, unacceptable. But why do we have brown water? Because, as Santi would tell you, we still got the cast iron mains that the British put down 120 years ago. When we came to office, Mr. Leslie, you told us what? That only 1.5% of the mains had been replaced of the 2,500 kilometers of mains. And with the best will in the world, it is going to take this country about 15 to 20 years to replace the entire mains. And the British did it when they had an empire. We simply have a country.
Yeah.
Okay? So I want us to be clear that when you hear me talking overseas and trying to make a case for us to access adaptation funds or for us to get grant funds or for us to do all of these things, is because on top of these mains that are corroded in some instances, we have a groundwater crisis. And the groundwater crisis is not just peculiar to us, it is a consequence of the climate crisis globally. And in some parts of the world, it has gotten so bad that people can't even farm. In fact, when you really look at it, the problems in the Sahel region in Africa and that northern Nigeria and northern parts of a lot of those countries in Africa come from a lack of access to water, and hence, taken to its worst extremes, end up with Boko Haram, etc. I was with the former governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, who is an imam, and he was making the point last week to me that 80% of the people in southwest Nigeria are above the poverty line, and 80% of the people in northwest Nigeria are below the poverty line. Now, I make these points to drive home that the water issues are going to continue to be a major issue, and therefore we have to prioritize them. Against that backdrop, I asked the Water Authority for a procurement plan, because the other part of the problem is that the supply chain globally has been disrupted. And the best example of what we could have faced was when we had to replace, what's the correct word, for the props, for the pumps there in the bell, that they were waiting on 18 months for plates to come out of China. Couldn't get the plates from China. And in the end, we still haven't gotten it, but we had to make decisions to take out the cast iron
Pipes.
was beams, cast iron beams that were literally rusting away, because if that pump fell, it would literally not be capable of being replaced in under 9 months to a year in a best case scenario. And it affects what percentage of Barbados? 30%? So that 30% of the country would be without water properly. You will get trucks, but in terms of pipe water for 9 to 12 months in a best case scenario. I need to share these things with you because people must understand what we are facing as compared to what we used to face 10, 15 years ago. It's a completely different world. Now I say all of that to make the point, and we had to do it here with Highway 1 too. We could have done Highway 1 earlier in this government, but we needed to make sure that when we were doing Highway 1, that we were putting down the water pipes and also the conduits ultimately for the pulling of electrical cables, etc. We have to do the same with Highway 7. And we have the other additional issue of natural gas pipelines too, as Kerry is reminding me. So while Sandia could perhaps give an instruction to go to Prior Park and repave the roads straight away, it would be putting good money that would be literally dug up within 6 months to a year because of the problems with the water, including in the same Prior Park. And therefore, we have to be able to make judgments at the Water Authority based on a limited supply of inventory. Who are the communities that are greatest in need of the pipes and the fittings and the different other things that they need in order to be able to lay down at this point in time. So I'm asking for a little bit of patience. We're trying to explain to the public what we're facing so that people understand that this is not an arbitrary decision, but it is one that has been well considered. And as the Deputy Prime Minister said, she's heard her colleagues over and over and over, but she's also asked them to just give us a little time in order to make sure that there is a seamless provisioning of the pipes for the reasons that I've just outlined to you. And I apologize if I'm a little more expansive in the answer, but I really feel that Barbadians need to know what we are facing, why we are facing it, and how we intend to deal with it. Thank you.
But thank you, Prime Minister, because to be honest with you, you have just cleared up a lot for me, because I was going to, I was just about to ask another question or make another comment with respect to St. James North, the road, on the Porter's Road, which I live on, and I have to traverse that. We have to traverse that every day. Now, our problem there is, and now I understand, but one of our major problems there is that old pipe that you talk about. And it ruptures like every few months. And you get, when it ruptures, then the road collapses. And there's always a big issue with that. So thank you. Those were just the two things I wanted to highlight. And thank you very much.
Thank you. And I think that, Mr. Leslie, you can appreciate, we hear you, but there's some communities that are pretty much in worse condition. And we're trying to deal with some of them first. But we're coming, help coming along the way. The last discussion I had this afternoon too, we met with the World Bank and the World Bank mission. We are not entitled as of right to a loan from the World Bank because our income status is too high. And that's why once again you see me making the points for the restructuring and the repurposing of the World Bank, because all of these things are global public goods. We're going without water, we're going without food, we're going without the ability to be able to have public health and also to be able to educate people, as we discussed with the young lady earlier. Every country in the Caribbean is facing the same thing we are facing with respect to water. And we've raised with the president of the bank, and we've raised with the bank again this evening, and they are now saying that they're looking to do a study to see how they can bring all of us together within the region, because we can reduce the cost of capital if we can have a diversified set of risk. And if all the risk is consolidated in one place, it is always going to be higher than if we diversify the risk. So they're beginning to listen to us on a few things, but we really, really, really need some adaptation funds globally, and we need some loss and damage funds. Because at the end of the day, the reason why we're in this position is because the Industrial Revolution, for the most part, has literally spawned the increase in greenhouse gases. And then secondly, it continues with obviously the burning of the fossil fuels. And what you saw happening this morning with the explosion of that gas line, Lord help us. Because the truth is that methane, as much as we can contain CO2, methane is the thing that is going to carry us to the tipping point quicker than anything else. Okay? And that is found in leaks in oil and gas pipes, in the manner in which we control waste, garbage, and finally, how we currently, the practices we use to raise livestock, quite frankly. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Prime Minister, Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Sorry. My name is Calvin Husbands. I just wanted to...
Raise it a little, exactly.
Yeah, okay. My name is Calvin Husbands. I just wanted to raise two issues with respect to the Appleby Gardens area. One of them is with respect to overgrown lots within the area. And for example, there's one directly opposite my home. And over the last 5 or so years, myself and some other neighbors have taken it upon ourselves to trim parts of the lot for security reasons, the whole issue of harboring rodents, etc. And we would have spoken to the minister before the last election with respect to dealing with the law. But it remains an ongoing challenge which I gather plagues the country as a whole. The second issue which we face is respect to the heavy deterioration of the roads in and out of the development. Two of those roads, one is Appleby Road, the other is Clark's Road. Ironically, those roads were used during the rehabilitation of Highway 1 as a detour. It compounded the deterioration of the roads, and now it is almost a case where you shift one hole, you're falling in another hole. So you literally can't miss holes getting in and out of the development. So those are two areas that hopefully, sharing with this forum, we can get some kind of relief at some point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, DPM. I think on the rehabilitation of the Abbott and Clark's Road, yeah. And then, AG, you want to just speak very briefly on the legislation that you're proposing to bring on the private lots, overgrown lots?
I can tell you that we are very near to completing a draft statute which will see obligations of a more onerous type than currently exists being placed on property owners. It is really unfair for you and others to have to take on the responsibility of debushing adjoining or neighboring lots. Of course, we always encourage self-help, okay? And it is in your community, so you have a vested interest in doing it. So I don't want to discourage you from doing that. That's always an admirable thing, but we recognize that all across Barbados, individuals who own land, and often they actually reside on the premises, have not been taking seriously their responsibility. Now, in our health services regulations going back into the 1950s, there is a set of penal provisions which will, well, basically criminalize an individual who maintains on land or who maintains his land in such a way as to be a harborage, that's the old word they use, harborage of vermin, mosquitoes, rats, and so on. It's been there for a long time. But the fine is a very small fine, and it simply is not practical. So we're trying to transform that entire legislative framework to modernize it so as to provide a greater incentive or perhaps a greater penalty for those individuals who are keeping their lots untidy. And I have to say that in all of our consultations, we recognize that government is equally the culprit. And the Prime Minister has, while it is a challenge, we recognize that we simply have to lead from in front. Now, of course, the concept of fining government or penalizing government is a little bit peculiar, but I can assure you that we are taking the responsibility for clearing and keeping government lands clean, whether it is the side of the road, whether it is a government plantation, national housing lands, wherever it is. We are going to lead from in front in that cleaning process, so that when we impose on landowners a more onerous obligation, they will understand that we're serious about it. But I've committed to the Prime Minister that certainly before year end, we will have that statute before Parliament.
Thank you, and may I thank the AG, because one of the significant things we're doing is trying to move away from an old system of criminal penalties, fine and confine, to one of civil penalties, where it is not a criminal penalty, but it hits you where it matters most, in your pocket. And therefore people will make an economic decision, hopefully, that it is cheaper to pay somebody to clean the lot than it is to have to pay the fines that are continuous. With respect to public property, I think that everybody at this table have called me the chief inspector, because I am the one, and the others in Public Works know, and the others who go on the rub and shoulder stores know, that I really find it disgusting that we continue to have roads with bush growing on the side of the road. And I have a simple point to make. Grass does not grow out of cement. So that if you clean the road and remove the silt at least once a week or once every 10 days, 3 times a month, the grass can grow to 3, 6, 8, 9, 10 inches. There was some opposite Queen's College, right there in Husbands. There's some on the highway that looks almost like afros. The clumps of grass that now looking like afros. And I have said that it is unacceptable, and even when I leave this office, I can keep saying so, because I really feel that none of us would invite anybody home by us and see garbage and bush on the front step and tell them come in. And if it is not good for home or us, then it can be good for the country that we belong to, because it's not good for us as a people. The public health risks are clear, but in addition to that, it sends the wrong signal that we just don't know how to take care of what belongs to us. And I know that our forefathers worked too hard to give us what we have, for us to treat it now with disdain and contempt, and to allow it to look as though we don't know any better. I know that Bajans know better, because in my constituency, I got people who, with the smallest little lot, maybe generational, but the smallest little lot, they come out and clean the silt from the gutter. Because if you clean the silt from the gutter, the grass cannot grow. And if the grass is allowed to grow, then you deal with the investment in the road, which now starts to literally disintegrate, and money that we should be spending on other things in this society, we now got to go back and spend on roads, simply because we have not taken the time to do the small things the correct way. Brush away the little silt from in front of your house, brush away the silt from the sides of the road 2-3 times a month. That way you know the grass can grow. Mr. Brooks, you coming to talk about that? I know you are an emergency management man, and you would know the extent to which bush also leads to flooding.
That is correct. Prime Minister, as I listen to Reggie, as you know, I live in Empire Park Road, and it warms my heart to hear that that issue at Empire Park will finally be put to rest, Madam Minister of Public Works. Even today, there was some fender bender as a result of people trying to shun the potholes or whatever. But what I am here this evening to speak to you about, as far back as 2007, 2008, I had the opportunity to speak to Minister Simmons at the time about the establishment of a satellite emergency operations center utilizing the location by the old St. John the Baptist School there on Holders Hill. It was therefore very pleasing to me last year or year before, when I was included in an assessment that with the redevelopment of that facility into their nursery and other community activity, that there lies the possibility of the district emergency organization being afforded the opportunity to establish a satellite emergency operations center at that location. Madam Prime Minister, this part of the parish and the northern parishes, as we would have witnessed today with the extended rainfall, there is a need for such a facility that the management and the coordination of any response to those areas in the north can be enhanced. We do have a National Emergency Operations Center in Warrens, but there are a number of gaps and a number of issues that you do not have the level of connectivity because of the terrain, and the establishment of such a facility there can significantly improve not only the coordination of any response to the parishes, specifically in the St. James and the northern parishes, but it also gives the opportunity, should the need arise, that you can transform what is happening in Warrens to a particular location in a closer proximity to where the impact is actually occurring. So therefore, Madam, I very much would like to, I'm very keen being part of the tour. I think it was a year and a half or a year ago. And I sincerely hope that it is still within the plans in the redevelopment of that facility, because I think it can add
It was
value.
actually late November last year, and some of the work is going to be done by the Maria Holder Memorial Trust,
yes,
and some is going to be done by the Ministry of Housing. So it will happen, but it is very much in the planning processes now. Okay?
That is much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, my brother, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Diana Ford, and I live in the northern section of St. James. To me, it's the most neglected part of St. James where I live. But tonight, I want to speak about lighting. Lighting on the highway which leads to the north. From the time you
Highway
leave,
2A.
2A, yeah.
Thanks.
From the time you leave the airport, it's like daylight. You can see the curbs, you can see the line in the middle of the road. There is even lines, there are lines at the two ends, the left and the right. But from the time you get to Redmond Village, you're in the country, no lights. It's a good thing that Barbadians are prayerful people, because if at any time me, a young lady in a car by myself, if I should get a flat, what will I do?
Tell them you are young.
I am young. What will I do? I am now have to ease out and hope that a nice young gentleman, old gentleman, young lady that could share with me to change the tire. I can change the tire, but if I cannot see what I'm doing, what help is it? I am begging to get some lights on the highway 2A, because that stretch goes right down to Milner Quarter, and it is pitch black. It is dangerous because you do not see the holes in the road, and today you will pass and there will be no holes. Some rain will fall and there will be wells, and you would not see them, and especially if water is in the hole. And people are not as considerate as once before. People will come and they will, if you easing up to ease through the hole, they're blowing the horn. What one of old people does do they say? One of old people don't stand off the road.
Are you ain't telling me, yo?
That's what they say. I don't get the chance. But the lights. I beg.
Hear you, Sandy. You heard. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. You spoke already, but go ahead.
I hear you, ma'am. Again, all 30 MPs are usually, excluding the Prime Minister, of course, but all 30 MPs, 29 MPs are usually requesting street lighting. As Kerry was saying to me just now, St. James seems to have been particularly neglected, and it's something that we're looking into. I think I'm actually bringing a paper tomorrow for some additional funds to be able to pay the Barbados Light and Power to make sure that we're in a position to get them to coordinate some additional street lighting. And as Prime Minister indicated earlier, she's asked the MPs to just send the list of those areas, in particular the ones that we're going to have to prioritize, because we can't do all the same time, but we have to look at the areas where there may be issues in terms of safety, in terms of risk to life because of the darkness of the area. We're just going to have to prioritize because the resources are limited in terms of what we can do, but we have to make sure that we're able to bring some lighting to the communities.
And when you get those lights, I want bright lights like up by the airport. I don't want them things that you can't tell where you're going still. Thank you very much.
Good night, ma'am.
Good night. My name is Carol Haynes. I'm from St. James Horse Village. I'd like to second that because definitely I drive on that highway and the lighting is terrible. You can't see where the road, the lines on the road to see where the road turns or which side of the road you're really meant to be on. But it does need some addressing. Second thing I'd like to say, thank you, good evening, Minister Husbands. Thank you ever so much for arranging for the lighting to be put in number 1 Halls Village. I thank you for that very much. It's made such a huge difference to that village. People will pass and say good night, and you can't tell who it is saying good night to you. But I really thank you for that. It's excellent. My question is about the hospital QEH. I sent him my CV requesting or offering my services to help with the, was it a committee that was being formed to look at the quality of services, and I have had experiences in England working with the hospitals in London, King's College, London, and also the Maudsley Psychiatric Hospital. And that is as a user of services, a member of the public. I'm asking, on the committee, has it been placed that a member of the public or a user of services has been placed, or even 2 people, not all professionals, but has that been looked at so that it's not all about what is provided and what is given, it's how it's received, because perceptions are different.
Yeah, I think that first of all, as I explained earlier, the Minister of Health is out of the island with the CMO, so I apologize for their absence tonight. I certainly will speak to them on their return later this week, this weekend, and to get the answers for you, and to let Roy answer you. I don't want to answer you off the top of my head and mislead you. What I can tell you is that because of our concern about the communication with patients and their families, that they have put in place a department that manages that. And that, in fact, I've had a number of people in the last few weeks comment favorably on the fact that that additional service now, where the communication, and in fairness, we copied it from what was being done at Harrison's Point, where people had to go the extra mile because obviously families could not come and visit. And therefore there was provision for the talking on tablets, and there was also provision for ensuring that communication was critical both to the patient's health and also to the well-being of families. And that has made a huge, huge difference to how people perceive what they're receiving at the hospital. And that more often than not, as we drill down, a large part of the problem was lack of communication as well. With respect to persons who are not necessarily specialists, but who have a perspective to share, I've maintained all along that that has to be the standard. That, what am I doing here? I'm coming as Prime Minister of this country every month, and I'm listening to ordinary citizens tell me, along with the rest of our cabinet and MPs, what you think ought to be done. And then with the public officers, to see how best we can meet your concerns as taxpayers in this country. So we will certainly find out for you the specific answer to the question that you've raised, but generally, we are in support of the broad principle. And Sandra was whispering to me as you were talking what some of your concerns were. So we'll get back to you, and to give you that answer as soon as they're back.
Thank
okay?
you.
Thank you very much.
Good night, Madam Prime Minister and all the others at the head table. My name is Faye, and I'm from St. James North and Weston in particular. And I have a lot of issues, not only me, but the residents of that area. And I must say that we have an excellent MP. However, you can't be excellent and all the others leave you out, and nothing is being done, because come election, me and the others can be mad and we ain't voting.
Wait, this is what Eddie's put you up to come and say?
No.
I want to make sure, because I'm about to tell you what he has benefited from or will benefit from. And if he hasn't updated you, I can recite it to somebody else.
Well, you better, because Edwin can't put words in my mouth and he knows that. But anyhow, one of my concerns
in fact, I think the people from the Sports Council are here and can confirm that as recent as yesterday, we signed off on a multi-purpose hard court for the people of Weston, not true?
And I thank you for that, Madam Prime Minister, because that was one of my issues. However, when you do that, I want you to remove the area where the garbage now stands and find an area for the persons who live in the back to have their garbage removed from the side of the road, because it doesn't look good. Hey, we are the Mecca when it comes to tourism. We are known as the Gold Coast of Barbados. However, nothing is being done on the Gold Coast. The roads on Highway 1 after you pass Line Grove.
You said nothing is being done? I'm not sure.
Not at all.
I'm not sure that the Treasury reflects that when the cost of Highway 1 on the West Coast was over what, $15–16 million, Sandy?
We want to see it, Madam Prime Minister. It's all right to say it, but we want to see it. Action.
But that's the point I'm making. The road was paved, new water mains put down, conduits put down. Let me finish. From bottom of University Hill all the way down to right here in Whole Town. And let me finish. Highway 7, and that's the problem when you have a whole country. But I don't have children, but I learned what it is to have children by being Prime Minister and dealing with 30 constituencies. Highway 7 has not been done, where's MTW people, in decades. And more importantly, their natural gas main concerns with respect to Highway 7. So I'm being straight with you. You have a number of hotels that are about to be built in Whole Town. If we went and did this road, the heavy-duty vehicles would have them dug up and mash up in what time? We first speaker tonight spoke about it. When, therefore, we had to make a decision on the prioritizing between Whole Town and Speightstown and Highway 7 on the South Coast, Santia, what have we had to do? Highway 7 got to be the next one. And then we come back to Whole Town to Speightstown. So I'm being straight with you. I'm fooling you.
Madam Prime Minister,
And
I
therefore,
know that, and
in
I
the
heard that
interim,
before.
But you heard it before, and you heard it before because it's the truth. Okay? So that bottom line is, we didn't create the debt that made us the third most indebted country in the world. I wish it were not so. And I wish, therefore, that I could spend a lot more every year. In fact, I actually have access to more money than I can spend in each year, largely because I still have to bring our debt down from where it is. Now, let me remind the country where it is, because I hear a lot of people talking a lot of loose talk about how this government now owe more than the last government. When we left, when we became the government, and the last government left, you know how much debt Barbados had? $17 billion. You know what our debt is today? In spite of the borrowing that everybody talks about, after a pandemic, $13.6 billion. So we've come from 177% debt to GDP. We went down to 118%. At the height of the pandemic, we went up to about 144, and we're somewhere about 126, 127, somewhere around there now. Okay? We're going to get there. But I would like to tell you that I can put all here for you before putting some for the Christchurch MPs. And in fact, the Deputy Prime Minister lives on the South Coast, so that she knows it daily, day in and day out. So I beg you do. When they only got one chicken and 10 people got to eat, this Sunday, some gonna get gravy and some gonna get little meat. Next Sunday, others who had gravy can get little meat and the rest can get little gravy. And regrettably, that's how we're gonna have to do. But I know you understand it better than most, because you are a past master at making things stretch.
Madam Prime Minister, and I applaud you for bringing our debt down. I applaud you, but we still have issues. And I said earlier, this is the Mecca for tourism.
As is the South Coast. Don't ever forget that, because while St. James may provide the revenue, the South Coast provides the jobs.
That is true. Okay. Not in the winter season, in the summer. I am from a tourism background, Madam Prime Minister. However, Western.
I want you on my team all the time.
I will never falter, so you don't have to worry about that. And I will always vote because it's my democratic right. However, if I have to attack, I will attack.
That's why I want you on my team.
All right, apart from the roads, and I spoke about the garbage by the center, and I thank you for bringing that center alive once more. But I also want you to have housing, or whoever is to be in charge of the remodeling of it, to remodel the center which was opened by the late Maria Craig. That center needs a lot of work. There are a few people in the area. From time to time, we will go and repair a board here and repair a board there, but it needs mega work. We also had the students from the UE painting. You know, but it needs fixing. Let it be an area where I can go and others in the area can go, as well as children. And it served its purpose during the COVID pandemic, when children were out of school, and some of us volunteered to go there and help with the youth and helping them to remain ready for when school reopened. That is one. The next is the Millie Eiffel Market. Every other area that has a market had their market upgraded. We were promised that at the beginning of the year, Millie Eiffel Market would have been refurbished. We are now 10 months, almost 10 months into the year, and this is not happening.
With all due respect, no. You see, you sounding like your MP. Your MP believes that everything must happen in St. James North. I get it.
He should.
Understand? That's what he elected to do, but I am elected to make sure that Barbados must be balanced in its development. And you're going to get that. But
right.
believe you me, the port has already adopted, and they've been doing it systematically. The one in Pile Bay, has anybody gone down there and seen it?
Yes,
Who has
it's
seen
nice.
the Pile Bay one?
Nice.
Exactly. And you're
I
going to
want
get
the same.
No, you're going to get it, my dear. But I also want to say to you that your very argument is the argument that I have used for your MP and this MP and this MP. Because St. James, given the fact that it is the repository of such generation of wealth, means that the things that you can do here as fundraising, as a part of civil society, far outweigh what the people in St. Philip or St. George or St. Joseph or St. Andrew might be able to do. And in those circumstances, God helps those who help themselves too. So that I really would hope that in the same way that we have spoken about the university students helping to paint, I know that this gentleman is a past master at having functions to fundraise. And therefore, he is going to share with his other two MPs that secret, and you will have a collective effort to match the government of Barbados with the very scarce funds that we have. And I'm being serious, because Kerry was given his mission yesterday. They want at Good Shepherd a community center stroke sports pavilion. He has to raise the money to do it. You understand? And I'm not asking them to do anything that I am not doing, or that I have not asked Cynthia Ford to do for the people of Jackson with me, or I'm not asking Eddie now to do with. And I have said, you would know that Western and Lower Carlton is also part of my genealogical ancestry. You understand? And therefore, I am more than happy to line up behind you and Eddie and help you with the fundraising in order to ease the Minister of Finance with the obligations that the Minister of Finance has for the rest of Barbados. And I mean that sincerely, because the other thing that we have been doing is putting planning gains on people who want to do developments. And this is a principle that has been used elsewhere in the world, and we use it here now. So the people who want to build the Hyatt, you put $2 million in an urban transformation fund. The people who want to do other hotels, they have to help with either some community or sports-based facility or things that we need to do, because that is how we bring about balanced development in a country that is only 166 square miles. So I am going to hold your hand, and I am going to hold the MP's hand, and I am going to help you with the raising of the funds to deal with the community center that Mrs. Craig did. The government, however, will work with you and the private sector to deal with the rehabilitation of the old fire station at Western. And I have given you that promise, and we're going to stick with that promise for you, because we believe that it has to be a facility that is not just made available to other people, but must also be available in a public-private approach with the community and anything else that makes it sustainable. Is that fair?
I thank you for that. I want to see the redevelopment.
I'm being fair.
But not only there, you know, it stretches from the pond. So you need to give my you need to give my fishermen something to haul it, somewhere to haul the boats.
And that's the point. And
I'm here fighting for them.
No problem, but the port facility has also been made aware of those issues with the market. And as it relates to the people who, and this is outside of St. James, but to the people in Six Men's, one of the planning gains that we put in place with respect to the Sandals, the beaches project that hasn't started yet, is the creation and construction of a new slipway there in Six Men's for the men to pull out the boats. So I share these things with you to let you know that on page 26 of the Covenant of Hope, we set out from opposition that government's powers don't only relate to tax and spend, but we can empower, facilitate, regulate, legislate. And in this instance, we are requiring through the conditions under which people are getting planning permissions to be able to do things that will help the community. So rest assured we can get there. But wasn't happening. Rome wasn't built in a day.
I thank you, but I want to see it in my lifetime. And I want coastal
I would hope
to
that
be...
you're going to live more than 3 years. So,
Okay, Madam Prime Minister, I plan to go to 106.
yeah, I hope so.
But I hope you have coastal in there with you because I have no beach. And that is because of the many groins that are being placed on all the beaches.
The groins
by all
may
the wealthy persons
Don't let me get there.
and cause problems.
The groins, the groins may exacerbate the situation. But there are two fundamental issues. As I understand it, sand moves and beaches move. Before there was the climate crisis, there are people who are old who would tell me that where you see the road now in front of Shafet Accra, that was beach 60, 70, 80 years ago. You know where I learned to swim?
By me.
No, I learned to swim down in St. James, don't get that. I learned to swim at the back of the Harbor Police Station that is now beach. And as a 3-4-year-old child, I see Glenn running his head and Mr. Blackman. As a 3-4-year-old child, I forget the name of the policeman, was Lorenzo Best?
Lorenzo Best.
He'd take me, and I still remember it because it was clearly traumatic. And he'd do so, boom, and throw me in the water so. That was not a beach. In our lifetime, we have seen the realignment of beaches even before people decided to put groins on the West Coast. So that's the first thing. Successive governments in Barbados, and this is the point I keep making internationally to make the case for us as well, successive governments have borrowed tens of millions of dollars, probably more than $100 million in the last 20 years, dealing with coastal defense systems. Because Mr. Leslie will tell you that if we don't deal with the coastal defenses and there's saltwater incursion into the aquifers, what happens? They're lost forever, correct? Or at least until somebody comes up with some technology to bring them back into use. So I say these things to let you know, and in fact, Eddie raised with me a matter between Mullins and Sherman's Bay. And that Coastal Conservation told them that they didn't have any money. That is not strictly true because you can't have money if you don't ask for it. That's the first thing. And secondly, there are too many agencies now with whom we are doing business from the Green Climate Fund right back through for us to start to make a compelling case to be able to do more coastal protection. And that is why we are out there working so hard to try and get some funds, but as grant money wherever possible. Okay? So I hear you loud and clear. I know it only too well because while I was first thrown in at the harbor, you know where I swim. And where I swim, the beach getting smaller and smaller. So I share the same concerns as you and give you the assurance that this issue of coastal protection. When people come to Barbados and ask me, what's the consequence of climate crisis? I tell them, go in 6 months and ask the people where the people used to live on the beach side.
And here was...
Where they are now.
Here was the same.
You understand? So that we have a story to tell. It's just that we don't tell it in a structured way to be able to unlock the funds that we need to unlock. And that's what we're trying to do now to help protect you.
I thank you.
All right? The other thing that we're doing, which I will use this opportunity, is trying to rebuild the coral reefs. And we have a little project going with trying to see how we can do more restoration and rebuilding of the coral reefs, which is absolutely critical to the coastal defenses as well.
Okay. I just want that when they do put their groins on the beach, they seek permission.
And those who don't, like the one that I see something going up here the other day, and I indicated that town planning needs to come forward. So it's not just on this coast, but the other coast too. I send the message that all of them need permission.
That's all I ask.
I agree.
And I thank you, Madam Prime
But
Minister.
thank you for your feisty spirit, and I can assure you that your defense of the people of St. James North is equaled only by your MP.
Good night, Madam Prime Minister and distinguished ministers, ladies. Stephen Downey, Trent, St. James. Madam Prime Minister, I can be very, very brief. But I want to speak on tourism and I want to speak on coastal matters too. But first of all, in your last budget, Madam Prime Minister, you spoke at length about the situation on Highway 1. And you spoke about the manholes flap, 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 flap. But Madam Prime Minister, they ain't flap, 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 flap no more. The bring it down. Anyhow, I want to be done with those manholes. There are a number of them that are way below the road level, and it's very, very dangerous, and people got to be swerving off them right there, one right opposite Stanley Lane, up by the old Jordan supermarket, with old Jordan supermarket was on the beach. Now, it is drawn to my attention in most of my life in tourism, both working in the hotel industry and being self-employed for the last 40 years in my riding stables. There's a growing concern in Barbados. Madam Prime Minister, constructive criticism is good for the soul. You see what I think? I support you till day. They're going to shoot me dead. All right? But constructive criticism is good for the soul, Madam Prime Minister. And there's a lot of rumor in this country going on. And I sincerely hope you can answer this question for us. God permit, February next year, we shall and will have the Whole Town Festival again. Which bring a lot of tourists to this country and generate a lot of foreign exchange in this country. It employs many people, not only from St. James, but from around Barbados. I understand from reliable sources, and the gentleman who is allegedly bought the properties, I understand the library must go, the police station must go, the courts must go, Surfside Bar and Restaurant must go for development of a tourist, of a massive undertaking of a hotel. Now, this is a great concern. I think that the people in this area, certainly me as well, have been held in the dark. Can you kindly enlighten us, the people of St. James North, the truth if that sector of land have been sold and that the police station is supposed to go up above here? I don't know, it drop off a back of truck, but I get calls from all the way, and I have many Canadian tourists in Sunset Crest who are very concerned about what is going on with what is historical Barbados, and Whole Town have served its purpose for the last 300 years. The Whole Towns Festival is a very, very incentive to tourism in this country. It generates a lot of foreign exchange and many tourists come to the island. So I would like to know if, in fact, the properties there have been sold and the development is going up there, which means that we Barbadians and tourists alike shall no more have any more Whole Town Festival. I'd like you to answer me first.
First of all, Stephen, I want to thank you for coming here and speaking. I am still yet to see how you equate the development of a facility with the stopping of the Whole Town Festival. But in the event that others may feel so, let me start from there. There will be Whole Town Festival, so that there is no denial of the validity of the benefits that the Whole Town Festival brings, not just to the people of St. James, as you've correctly said, but to wider Barbadians who also participate in the festival. Secondly, you have a business that's been going on for a while that you use to sustain yourself. Most of us in here have jobs, but we have a hard core of unemployment in this country that we need to get rid of. And we have very, very few options left for us to earn money as a country, particularly since, as the National Population Commission has also said, we have not replaced our population for the last 40 years, so that we don't have enough people generating income. And regrettably, because a lot of our tourist product is mature, and I don't want to say aged, but mature and in need of refreshing. We are trying to pay our bills in the third decade of the 21st century with hotel plant largely built in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. Agree?
Yes, ma'am.
That is why it gave me great pleasure to do the groundbreaking yesterday morning in Hastings to take on a site that had one of the oldest hotels, Ocean View, along with Caribbean. And may I remind us, both of those properties have been derelict for how long? How long?
About 20 years.
Huh?
About 20 years.
Near 20 years. Good. We have been waiting to be able to do other things, because if an investor comes here tomorrow, I can't think of 5 greenfield sites that we can send for new tourism development. Not on the coast. Can't I think of 5? Are we down to that last set of big ones now? So much so that those that are not using theirs, we need to find a way of really doing with them and come back, because there's more demand than there is available space. Now, why am I talking about hotels and tourism properties? Let me break it straight down. We need jobs for our people. And Owen Arthur was cursed for saying that land must have its highest economic return and value. And the government that cursed him for saying it came in and applied the same principle that Owen Arthur argued for, that he was cursed for by the same people. Correct? You remember?
Yes, ma'am.
I know you would remember. All this government has done is that we have put out an advertisement for both here, and we did it elsewhere in Oistins, but we said we're doing one at a time now. And to move what is civic facilities that have a limited number of jobs that are being provided for the police, for the librarians, for the persons who work in that civic center. If we move it across off of the beach, they still have the jobs, do they?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. These services are still immediately available to anybody walking on the coast?
Yeah.
Okay. And that there is nothing in Barbados called a private beach?
But on a point...
Let me finish, and then I can let you talk when you're done, Skipper. At the end of the day, if we can put a facility now on that same spot, while moving the civic center that preserves the number of jobs that we have, and we can put a facility on that spot that can give us opportunity for hundreds of jobs, not to mention then the expanded work for the truckmen who got to deliver all the foods and the goods, not to mention the expanded sales for all the merchants who got to sell, not to mention the NCC approved licensed vendors who will now have a different category of persons out there to be able to sell to, not to mention, of course, all of these things. And we are conscious that even with respect to the matter of the restaurant, which is the only commercial facility out there on that block, that we should try to accommodate them. Because this government is not about destroying opportunities, but it is in fact about increasing opportunities where people can have a livelihood and where people can get jobs. And all that we are doing is repurposing existing sites that right now do not add to the economic value to allow me to help pay for Bajan children to go to the university with ease, or that don't help us to allow us to pay to do the expansion of the work. Who was it that was talking from? I didn't even get into the multi-purpose sports complexes. I'm talking about the other basic things that we need as a country. And whether we like it or not, the difficult conversations that we must have relate to the fact that the output, what we are putting out as a country, is not sufficient to be able to maintain the quality of life that we want to maintain in this country. And if we continue to kick the can down the road, then what we have seen happen in the last 15 years will only multiply and get worse and worse and worse. I would like, and I said it today, the Barbados Youth Advance Corps, we set it up in 2019 before the pandemic. We wanted to give every young person going in there $1,000 per year, a stipend of $600 a month, because we know a lot of the people who going into the Youth Advance Corps cannot afford, in some instances, even to pay the bus fare or to eat lunch and to get the lunch. And we felt that we had to do a stipend. In order for us to continue, I've said to the Minister of Youth that we want to continue, but we're going to have to reset it at $400 a month in order to make sure that we're not just dealing with reduced numbers, but that we can keep the same 1,000 persons. Why? For 2 years. Because we're satisfied that if we can give them access to structured learning. This young lady here has special needs education, Carrie, tell me. If we can give them access to structured learning and structured, what they call the soft skills, but what I call the essential skills of life, the attitudes and the values and those things, that we can make sure that there is less opportunity for people to get involved in criminal activity and for the devil to find work for idle hands, or that there is less reason for some of them to say, again overseas, because I can't find work in the country of my birth. And it is our responsibility, therefore, not just to do it in tourism. I've been trying to do it with making sure that the IDC Export Barbados can bring what we call life science industries. We have educated 6,000 Barbadians in the last 5 years in science. And while teaching is the most noble of professions, it cannot be the only profession that we give to people who graduate in science. Not when the rest of the world is doing research and development and there are other firms that can come and set up here. So I'm saying to us, look, and I say so conscious that change is not always easy. I get it. But if we don't manage change, and if we don't create the opportunities to repurpose, there was a time in Barbados when they had how many sugar factories about the place? As a child, I used to hate to come down to Porter's because it smelled. I don't like cane juice, and I hate the smell that the sugar factories used to have. That's the truth. I understand it, but as a child, I didn't like it. But we don't have that in Barbados anymore. We got one single sugar factory. And in my lifespan, over the last 56, 57 years, we have seen the country change and adjust. There was a time when plantation land was the most valuable land, and beach land was the equivalent of rab land. That is why in the Tenantries Freehold Purchase Act, you do not have beach land as part of the scheduled tenantries. And we have seen in our lifetime it reverse, where plantation now land is treated and bought for next kin to nothing, but beach land selling at $100 a square foot. Barbados, and sometimes catch yourself, you can get a few lots on this coast going for as high as 100 US a square foot. So I hear you, and I give you and the entire country the assurance that even as we seek to create a platform where we can sustain our quality of life by earning more, we are not going to do so in a way that puts Barbadians out of the picture. And I go further. This minister here has been told that the financial literacy program must happen because Bajans must be able to participate in the opportunities in this country, not just to have a piece of the rock, but to have a piece of the action. This government is the first government that I know of any part of the world that has said that you must have, as of right, in owner-occupied houses, photovoltaic panels or if necessary, the nano wind turbines where the roof structure can't carry the panel. Why? Because the wind, the sun, and the sea don't belong to none of us in here. It belongs to the patrimony, the collective of the country. And therefore, in everything that you see us do, ownership will matter. The opportunity for people who are now buying houses at Lancaster in the Hope program, those same houses are going for how much, Sandy? About 180,000? Eddie, 180? 172 to 180, 185. For a house and land for 3-bedroom and two bedroom, wall house, and the 3-bedroom one is about 230 to about 230. With land. There is no other part of this country you can get that. And you know why you're getting it? Because the government has a policy to use the roof and to let you get the benefit of the roof and reduce the cost. And for a similar house, much smaller, with much less facilities, you're spending $60,000, $70,000 more in other parts of this country. So for us to continue, I give you the assurance that even as we repurpose all facilities to have new earning power for a 21st century Barbados, that we will not as long as I got blood in my body, not as long as I got oxygen running through me, that we will not take any actions that will in any way prejudice and exclude Barbadians from both ownership and access and the run of the country.
All right, Madam Prime Minister, one thing before I go. So I take it that it is yes that the properties have been officially sold, that the deal has been done.
I've told you that we went to a public tender.
All right, thank you.
And that, no, it's not necessarily sold because I'm waiting on the Barbados Tourism Investment Inc.
Thank you, ma'am.
To tell us what is the commercial deal that has now to be done with the persons who have won the tender.
Right. Because you see, or what we are accustomed having, or seaside theatre and those activities, if so, will no longer be there anymore. Anyhow, I'm moving on from that. Mr. Simmons, sir, a question to you.
Which speech?
Mr. Simmons, sorry? A question to you, Mr. Simmons.
Before you go there, though,
yes,
my brother, what you're talking about is that space in front of the police station where you would normally do the opening ceremony and those types of things.
Exactly.
It would not be the hardest thing in the world to relocate that to somewhere else. And quite frankly, when I was tourism minister, it was in my mind that we should make better use of the greens across Sunset Crest and into Old Town, because they are open common spaces, and quite frankly, I think that it would be a far more comfortable thing to utilize some of that than just the car park at the police station.
On a point of order, Mr. Minister, if you think about going out on Massey property, you got another thing coming. You will go pass laws in this country to let Massey understand that this is Barbados and not Trinidad. Because I know of vendors presently, and my friends, the Alcoholics Anonymous that drink down there, Burgo and that crowd, that the management of Massey have tried to remove Barbadians from selling the little goods and services on those greens.
So, Stephen.
And I make no apologies.
No problem. Don't get fret up. What you are telling me is that the minister in charge of commerce must find a vending facility for the people who want to vend in whole town.
Okay, I got more serious
That's what.
point.
No, I'm serious. Is that what you're asking?
I ain't asking that. I want a more serious point, though.
No,
a more serious
but you raised. No, but truthfully, just simmer down, Skipper. You can get your chance to speak, but you can't raise problems.
No, boy, can't manipulate.
And then expect nobody's trying to. And with all due respect, let us be very clear. If you come here to get serious problems solved, then let's solve them. You cannot raise a situation of which I am unaware, that there are vendors who are being told that they cannot vend in whole town and who have no space to vend. Is that the problem?
Madam Prime Minister, I have a woman. My outside woman is selling snow cones with a van.
So is that your way of saying yes?
And she was removed. She was removed from selling snow cones. Yes, a pretty black girl. I'm 16, she's only 21.
Melissa. Steve, what you say?
I am 16, she's 21. Madam Prime Minister.
Steve, the only thing I know about 21 is the card game, so I can't help you.
Madam Prime Minister, I'm ready to meet my creator. I'm going to get in bed with woman I want, a woman that got add up
With
my
all
years
due
to
respect,
100,
Steve,
man.
we got, listen, this is still, I don't know what children are listening to tonight, so I would like you to hold and contain.
On a very serious
No,
note.
but hold on, I'm serious. Look. Kerry knows this is a serious issue.
You say you don't want to take up people's time, so you want to be serious. You want to take up, you don't want to take people's time.
Mr. Downey, I got to call you Mr. Downey because that's the only way I can get you to cool down. All right? I got to remind you that your name is Downey, so cool down. Listen, Kerry will tell you that it is not only Old Town, but that the cabinet has been addressing this issue of the absence of vending facilities in different parts of Barbados. We have a problem where, because we don't have designated areas, either people are precluded from doing it, or in some instances, the area within which they're doing it is not fit and suitable for them to do it, and you end up then with public health problems that can put people's lives at risk. Okay? So I give you the assurance that having raised the issue with respect to Old Town, he knows about Warrens, he knows about other areas that we have spoken about by Graham Hall, etc., that we will look into it. So, and it is less an issue for Massey, and it is more an issue for the government of Barbados.
One more point, and this question is directed to the Honorable Minister, my dear friend, Mr. Kerry Simmons. Mr. Simmons, I spoke to you at that same lady the day before during elections, our friend that served the best food in Barbados, Sandra in Sandy Lane. I believe that Barbados would have remembered, or they should have not have convenient minds, but should remember what Sandy Lane did to Sandra when they removed her, and Mr. Oyenafa had to intervene and deal with them, and the big rocks had to be moved when he called Hats and tell George Payne, come down here and move them rocks with a bulldozer and a truck. But on a very serious note, Mr. Simmons, Barbados is a country that depends very highly upon tourism. And I have spoken on brass tacks. I've spoken to you, Mr. Simmons, sir. I've spoken to previous ministers of the environment and previous ministers of tourism. We in Barbados brag that there are no private beaches. But technically, Sandy Lane has a private beach. Because that access to go to Sandy Lane Beach is not a safe and a suitable access. And you have tourists coming to this country. Only 3 weeks ago, I was going down there with a horse, and I had to get down off my horse and take off my shirt and wrap a woman's foot and ride her up to try and bring Cove Hotel. She was going down through there by that public access and stood up on a piece of tree and went through her foot. I had to get on my horse and tie her foot, pouring blood. That access there, by where it's supposed to be between one Sandy Lane, is not an adequate access. It is not safe. You can only access Sandy Lane Beach at low tide. And God forbid you get back before your tide get high, or you're going to get battered in the cliff, or you can't go through Sandy Lane Hotel. I am calling on you, the minister and the representative, to make it mandatory legislation that Sandy Lane be made to provide an access to this country for the people of Barbados and the tourists alike. If a tourist suffers a water skiing accident, they suffer a speedboat accident, a drowning, you mean instead of going out Sandy Lane, or go to one of the people in Sandy Lane in one of the big houses and ring a doorbell, we would like the ambulance to go to somebody in desperate need of medicals. It is ridiculous. It is not right. I don't care who they are, what they invest in this country. We, the people of St. James, want a public, efficient access to the beach between Sandy Lane Hotel at no less than a sphere of 20 feet in driveway. I am calling on that and record it. You got one down here, Mr. Hinkson, that's your constituency, sir. where the people in the surrounding areas have news between Sandpiper and what used to, and the other hotel here and there. That has been completely blocked off and fenced off. Can't go down there. Colony Club, a barrier across a road that was used by Barbadians, black and white, for over 300 years, and a barrier and a chain across the road to a beach. These things are unjust and are not fair, and I will speak till the day I die. I will not criticize anybody, but I want you to promise me, Mr. Minister, money or no money, Sunny Lane or no Sunny Lane, sponsoring Gold Cup or Gold Cup. No, I am calling for a proper public access for Barbadians and the cruise ship passengers who visit this country every single day. So have a good night and God bless you.
Stephen, I want to say to you, Stephen, that I could not agree with you more on the question of beach accesses. Now, let me start by saying that Sandy Lane is not the only offender. That beach access is not the only one. You're quite correct when you made the reference to the one which is over in Eddie's constituency, and I could tell you that there are a few others as you go up that coast towards Prospect that are in absolutely deplorable and unsatisfactory condition. I will go further. I have taken Adrian Ford, my friend and brother and colleague, to see some of those beach accesses because we really do have to now commit some resources to the rehabilitation of them. It isn't just that they are broken away with in fact, in one case next to one of the elegant properties, I can't remember the name of the elegant property there by Appleby Gardens, Crystal Cove. In that particular one, there is a tree there that has completely, the roots of the tree have mashed up the pavement. And at the end of it, it has broken off. I know exactly what you're talking about with people getting injured because there are a lot of older people from Appleby who can no longer get down to the beach on the morning because it is virtually inaccessible unless you're a very fit senior citizen. That's the honest truth. And I will go a little further. Some of them need to be lit as well because much like you, there are some older gentlemen who like to take a young lady on a moonlight stroll. And you can't do that safely unless you have a beach access that got a little bit of light. So it is an issue that is real, Stephen. I take your point, and we're going to have to look at it holistically across the length of this course.
Let me go further. And it is not just beach access. Let me be very clear. One of the planning gains that we put in place for the new Hyatt is to turn the old fish market in Bay Street, that site, into a facility for Barbadians because it's not just about access. I've gone beyond that long time, Skipper. The Western Fire Station, ask Eddie Hinkson. We've had proposals from all kinds of people to buy it. We haven't sold it because once again, as we just said earlier, we want a facility that is available to earn but also still is available to Bajans in this community. Part of the difficulty, and I wish, Stephen, that we would remember this, if Barbados was a greenfield site, we could say and do a lot of things, but it is not a greenfield site. And this government inherited a number of things, but we also inherited a lot of obligations, and I started the night by talking about them. So let us be clear that that which we always want can sometimes happen, but not in the time frame that you want. We have determined that wherever possible, and we can use planning gains to impose on people obligations that will benefit the wider society, like at Western, like at Bay Street, like Kerry is hoping I would do it at Good Shepherd, but he's going to raise the funds for that. Like other places, we will do so. And believe you me, we have put more time and investment into this. And even, and let me be very clear, there is going to be, and there has been, a realignment of the roads on the West Coast in the past in order to facilitate development and the creation of jobs. It was done at the top of Speightstown. What's the name of, right there by, What's the name of the hotel that was right there? No, Sandridge? Was it Colin? Cobbler's Cove. Thank you, Colin. You understand? And that was done under Owen Arthur. It was done with Port Ferdinand by the last government with the construction of the bridge. And we're going to have to do it again, and there will be a public consultation on it again with respect to what is intended to be able to rescue Port Ferdinand from being a white elephant, and to be able to have a hotel put in there that instead of us having villas that don't, or apartments that don't employ nobody really, that we can now put that into a functioning hotel facility there, and on the proposal on the other side of the road where Nikki Beach was. So those consultations are coming. There's going to be one in St. Lawrence Gap soon, with respect also to the provision of a water feature going in by St. Lawrence Gap to allow us to be able to enhance the tourism offerings there. And why are we doing these things? Because Barbados is losing its competitive edge in comparison to other countries in the region. And if we don't do something about it, we're not going to be able to command people's attention and appetite to come here. But as I said, it will never be done at the expense of Bajans, because there has to be balance between what we do to earn and what we do to preserve dignity and opportunities for ownership. Thank you.
Good night, everybody. My name is Kira Isidore. I'm a resident of St. James, the Garden St. James to be exact. I just want to raise 2 points, 2 concerns. The first one is the transitional community care program that was launched 2020 November by the Prime Minister through QEH. I just wanted to say that there are a lot of elderly persons in my community that don't know about this program. So I have persons flagging me down, asking me if I could just check the blood sugar, and sometimes when you check the blood sugar, sky high. The whole reason for the program was to, I think, minimize the readmissions into the hospital. If you could take care of these persons in the community, do some teaching as it relates to the blood sugar levels and all the other stuff. You know, you have persons coming into the hospital because the blood sugar is out of control. My thing is to get that information out there more, because a lot of persons do not know about the program. It was mentioned a couple times when the Prime Minister, when you spoke on it at intervals, but persons still really don't know about the program. Outside of that, to get on the program is another thing. So I was told that you need to go on a website, you need to do this, get this information.
If I can, the program that you're talking about specifically
Yeah.
is really an outreach program from the Queen Elizabeth Hospital to deal with outpatients. Because of the need that you're expressing and that we've appreciated is there beyond what you're getting at the QEH, what you're able to supply at the QEH. The current Minister of Health has asked us to be able to turn and to do an expanded program that is community-based. Now you would note that the polyclinics normally would be who would do a community outreach program. But in this particular instance, we have and took a decision to let the QEH do it. And why? The rate at which Barbadians are presenting for dialysis is at staggering levels. And a large part of the reason is because we're not controlling our condition at an early enough stage in order to make sure that we don't end up being candidates for dialysis, amputation, or all of the other awful things that we know that happen when people don't take care of them. So that we ask for you all to go into the communities and to each manage a cadre of persons, but they relate to the QEH. The polyclinic system now will have its own separate public outreach that is general and not limited by those who are QEH outpatients. And that is where, ma'am, that I think you'll get it. I announced 2-3 weeks ago that we have asked the Ministry of Health to design a massive testing program where Barbadians can get to know their status. Because if you don't know your status, if you don't know that your blood sugar is sky high, and you still eating a pastry when the day come and drinking as if tomorrow will never come, what's going to happen? You know better than me. So we're going to embark on a huge testing program. The other thing that I've learned is that there is a test that can truly tell the truth about whether we have been doing what we were supposed to be doing or not doing, correct?
Yeah.
What's it called again? HB?
HbA1c, yeah.
HB?
HbA1c.
HbA1c. And the Minister of Health is in the process of negotiating with PAHO a grant facility that we have in order to be able to buy enough machines to ensure that going for the tests anywhere in Barbados is as easy as going to a gas station or a shop in order to do your business. Why? Because we need Bajans to get in the habit of finding out the truth about their health care. And if we can do that, then we will save a lot more people in this country. So I thank you for raising it, but I hope I can clarify that the expansion will come not so much with the QEH outpatients clinic program, which you are in, but in the establishment of one that is allied now and anchored to the polyclinics.
Okay. All right, so the other concern, thank you. The other concern is where I live in the Garden St. James, I really don't have a road to my house. I am here tonight to find out if there is a reason that I don't know about that we can tell the other residents, because everybody is concerned about the fact over how many years. I'm 42, and that was like that before I born. My grandmother would have been there. I know myself. And my concern really is that suppose my neighbor get ill, which he was ill the other day, but lucky for him, he was able to make it to the hospital. In the event that the ambulance has to come there, how are they going to get to the persons? I am not seeing no EMT personnel traveling with nobody on a stretcher, carrying, no, that I can never see that happening. I don't know if it happens. It has happened. Okay.
There are areas like in Danesbury, Blackrock, others. Part of the difficulty is that if people go and put down houses without planning permission, these things happen. And therefore there is no proper services put in, there is no proper road, and very often government then has to come in long after the fact and correct it. I'm not blaming anybody, I'm just describing a situation that happens. And that is why Santia is going to make sure that especially in those what I call the tenantry roads and small roads, that we are in a position to do that out of the depots by providing the depots with access to the equipment and making sure that they probably will keep some of the asphalt workers to be able to be distributed among the community to do it. Will you get yours first, second, third, fifth, 10th, 12th? I can't tell you. But suffice it to say that we believe that a dedicated program that helps us to deal with these small village roads and tenantry roads where these things have happened, that we can do with it. In some cases, there are problems with people being landlocked. And up to yesterday, Kerry took us to one in St. James, and then you took me to one before as well. There are at least 2 instances in his constituency where the development has happened in a way that has literally made people landlocked. And therefore, we have to be more creative, and in some instances, we can't even get in a road. We have to get in a pathway to be able to get down to the houses because of the manner in which the houses have been built. So when we talk to people about how they build and where they build, because we don't want you to waste your money or to have bad experiences. The roofs need hurricane straps. The roofs can't have these flat roofs or the large overhang because the wind can peel them back like toffee paper. The houses need to be built in a way that does not block other people's access because when you block other people's access, you are creating a recipe for a fire that can take out all of the houses, including the person who blocked the access. Not true?
Yeah.
And that is the danger and the public purpose that we're trying to preserve when we say to people, work with us for where you build, work with us for how you build.
And last but not least, the same...
Just tell Eddie, I assume you know where she is, so that we can resolve the issue.
Last but not least, the same transitional care program, I would have been present when the past Minister of Health, Mr. Bostic, he said that the program was being designed for persons who would have done the regional exam and would have exhausted all 3 chances. So I have persons who would have done the regional exam, exhausted all 3 chances, and still waiting to be employed. Then you have auxiliary and different levels of persons working on this same program. The fact still remains that there's not much that they can do under, I don't know if to say the coverage of the Nursing Council, because you have to be at a certain level to be covered to do certain things. So even things like going into a person's home and putting out medication, or auxiliary nurse can't do it. You have to get RN to go in and do it. The program don't have any RN. I think it's only now that they're saying that they're looking to employ RNs. I would have worked on that program before, but as soon as I got through, I had to work on the ward. So I am saying that we need to have more persons like maybe RNs and, to be able to go into the homes of these people to have an effective program. Because at this stage now, with the auxiliary nurses, there's not much that can be done. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you for sharing, and we certainly will raise it with the minister when he comes back and see how we can have perhaps a combined approach which will have still the auxiliary nurses but a few RNs working with them on a zonal basis. Can that work?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
All right, I got to be at work for 9 o'clock, so call and let him know that I was here.
I hear you, dear. Let's make sure you get this safely for me. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Good night, Madam PM, and to the others at the head table. I just want to highlight 2 things which I would have spoken to Mr. Hinkson about before. Sorry, my name is Kimberly Agard, and I live in Halls Road, Rotterdam, St. James, so I'm a constituent of St. James North. The road, I know, Madam Prime Minister, when I came in, I heard you speaking, you were addressing some person before, I think the gentleman from Ashton, and I heard you say, and I also heard the minister speak about funds in relation to road works. I am begging and I am pleading that the Rotterdam Road, the Rotterdam to Gibbs Road make that list. Like everybody else, we have been promised. We have been promised.
Let me just tell you, I don't want you to use a lot of breath tonight. The road is where we visited yesterday. It is one of the first CAF roads, and it's starting in 2 weeks' time.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Also, at the bottom of that road, I spoke to Mr. Hinkson about it as well. Years ago, when I was younger, and going to the Gibbs Beach, there is an open lot at the bottom where you were able to park. For a while, that the access to that lot has been restricted with boulders and chains, and now it has become overgrown with bush. So persons are not able to park on that lot anymore when they're going to the beach. However, because the Gibbs Beach and Mullins Beach is a popular beach, the road, the bottom of that Rotterdam, the Gibbs Road, is impassable many a Sunday afternoons. You cannot pass because one lane, one side of the road is blocked with vehicles. There is one single car space off of the road at the bottom of that stretch. And if you don't get that stretch, then the road, as I said, becomes impassable. The beach is a popular beach. I think that if the lot is a government-owned lot, that it needs to be made accessible to persons going to the beach. If it is not, I think that some kind of arrangement can be made with the landowner, because when the access was restricted years ago, one would have thought that some kind of development would have been done to the land. But over the years, nothing has been done. And for them to have the land there, causing an inconvenience publicly, I believe that some kind of arrangement can be entered into with the landowner, and that problem can be eliminated.
The bottom line is that we have said to the Ministry of Public Works, and I know that the DPM is aware, that we have to have a series of car parks along the land side, and maybe 1 street in, 2 streets in, on the west coast and the south coast of Barbados. Because the actual density on the coast means that what you just described becomes the reality for too many people. I could give you the same description for out in St. Albans, out there in Lower Carlton. I could give you the same description on the south coast, Santia, for quite a few other places. So what we're trying to do is to create an opportunity for people to be able to invest in and see it as a source of income, just as people see licenses for transport as a source of income, but equally to solve a public national issue as well, which is that of parking arrangements. And then what has to happen concomitantly is that you then have a series of shuttles. So you have the round the town for Bridgetown shuttle, that nobody should have to wait more than 8 minutes, 10 minutes for a bus. You have one for the West Coast, and you have one for the South Coast. And that we would want these shuttles in a different color and in a different type of bus. We've even asked for them to look at getting the hydraulics working for what you all call the party bus, or we will call the older people the old Rockland or elite buses, because it will add a unique, Mr. Thompson is still here, or he gone? It will add a unique tourism charm to Barbados's product, while at the same time helping us to solve a difficult problem of density in our coastal areas. Many of you also would have seen the front page story on Sunday that spoke about our vulnerability in our coastal areas. So we are with you, but as I said, we're juggling, and that is why I'm asking Barbadians, in order for us to continue to do what we're doing, we need to get growth. But in the growth that we get, we will start addressing some of these niggling and in some instances larger issues that are preventing people from benefiting from access to the amenities that we have in the country.
Okay,
yeah,
thank
Sanjay?
you.
Hi, good night to the Prime Minister, ministers, MPs, and again, the parliamentary secretaries who are here. My name is Corey Worrell, and I am a resident of St. James North. Now, I want to address 3 categories of issues, and I'll start first with schools. I can start first with Gordon Greenwich Primary School. Now, there's a outside fence that runs parallel to Highway 2A. This has been about 7 to 9 years, I can't remember exactly, that a truck ran off the highway, laid down the fence, and ended up as far in as the cricket pitch. Now that playground, that playing field, is where the children of Gordon Greenwich play daily. When that truck ran off the road, it was on a weekend, I think it was. Now, I spoke to the principal about it, and she, at the time, said that she also spoke to the ministry. The ministry said that their responsibility ends at the back of the school, and that the pasture belongs, the responsibility for the pasture is NCC. Then there has some issue with the insurance. Now, I really don't care who responsible.
Mr. Worrell, you don't need to go no further. There's one government and one country. You understand? And I will ask that it be investigated as a matter of urgency, and we look at it.
Excellent.
Carry point number 2.
Number 2. Now, this point is for both St. Boniface Nursery and Gordon Greenwich as well. Now, both of those schools are on the highway, and the reality is that vehicles come across that highway flying. Vehicles have also run off the road and run into the fence by St. Boniface Nursery, and those little children play there. I am asking for bollards, what we would call silent police, to be just put up by the fence just to mitigate that problem, and not just for schools in St. James North, but if it could be a national policy to protect our children. Now, coming from let me go to another school now, St. Albans Primary. The access road to St. Albans Primary is a headache whenever it comes to picking up children. Parents drive in and they have to turn around at the top. The thing is, parents arrive early and they park on one side of the road, and if you ever drive up in there, you're trapped. I don't know, there's a piece of land that runs perpendicular to the back of the school that connects right onto Crick Hill. I don't know who the land belongs to. I don't know if it's private or government. My recommendation is for that road to be able to connect to that road onto Crick Road, so that during school time, parents can enter one way and leave the next. Bridges. There's a bridge that is between Gordon Greenwich Primary and St. Boniface Nursery School. That bridge is used heavily by not just the residents, but a lot of the children. I assume that the bridge is about 100 feet up in the air. There's a railing that has a space that is more than 2 feet, which means that any child coming across there, playing or anything, could easily fall over, and given how deep it is, you won't hear them. I know the Prime Minister is always so worried with me. So all the recommendations I bring in ain't costing a lot of money.
Lord bless you. Thank you.
Right?
All right. Well, I think I have a note of all 4 of them. Okay?
Okay, thank you, Prime Minister. Still on the issue of bridges, coming from Burroughs, right there after you pass St. Thomas Parish Church, coming back this direction, all the way up to the Wim, there are a lot of bridges. Now, there are cars that have hit the embankment at the start of the bridge. A lot of them end up on, I don't know if any ever drop off. My recommendation is if you could just put some reflective tape on it, or reflective paint, so that especially for persons who don't know that area, coming around there at night, they'll be able to see and just avoid. Now, we talk about the roads, and I don't believe that the government is going to be able to fix the situation with the lighting on Highway 2A because it's going to cost. It's not going to happen overnight. So my recommendation is this: at least make the situation a little easier for us. What the government did by the Wim side, where y'all put down the cat eyes and the road markings. So until you can fix the problem totally, if you can at least give us some road markings and some cat eyes along that stretch, that will help. And my final point, out by Gordon Greenwich School and St. Boniface School, there's a bus stop that a lot of the children use. I would really love if we could have some sort of covering, because the children have to wait there pretty long. And yes, it does cost money, but I don't think that it is something that will cost an elaborate amount of money. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey, for listing out those things, and we certainly will follow up on them. And the last one is a bus shelter, you said. I think we're going to take the last 2 because we're conscious that with the weather, people need to get back home, so we'll take 2 more.
Good night, everybody. My name is Carrie Birch. I'm actually a constituent of St. James North. I run a company.
Carrie or Terry?
Carrie.
Carrie, thank you.
I run a company called 13 Degrees North, and it is a film and video production company. We specialize in media. I'm hearing some things tonight that are really encouraging in terms of job creation, in terms of things like the improvement of the tourism product. And why I like to hear those things is because I feel one important industry or one important economy that really feeds into the tourism development, the development of the tourism program, is the orange economy. And I did not wear this dress on purpose, it just happened.
I see you advertising orange.
My company and a new resident of Barbados, Steve Kosky, who is here, he also lives in the parish of St. James, along with 2 other companies from the USA, are looking to host a festival next year. This festival, one of the companies that is our partner, is actually called Grassroots Productions. They are the management company for the Black Eyed Peas, who would be one of the people who will be headlining the festival. Now, as my friend there in the red had said when he was talking about the Whole Town Festival, we understand how important it is that festivals are to persons coming into Barbados. With this particular festival, we are looking to have 30,000 patrons at this festival over a 3-day period. We're also looking to stream the festival to other countries, as well as producing a post-produced package of the festival as well. So that's an additional 18 million people in Africa where we will broadcast it, and 500,000 people on the days of the festival itself. Now, one of the main things about the festival is, and because I am from the green economy, is that we are looking to incorporate local talent throughout this festival. So one of our main issues, well, not main issues, but one of our main aims is to be able to bring this international stage to Barbados, and we put our talent on that international stage. So now it's easy for a Barbadian performer here to say they've been on the same stage as the Black Eyed Peas, or they've been on the same stage as David Guetta, for example. Burna Boy was the beginning, but we feel that in 2023 and beyond, we need to start looking at festivals and the orange economy as really a way to build out our economy better. One of the things also that I had, that I was very glad to hear was when Prime Minister Motley had told our friend from Western that she likes when people want to help themselves, right? So one of the things, we're so confident about what this festival could gain and bring to Barbados that we, the partners, this will be myself, my husband, who's my business partner at 13 Degrees North, as well as Mr. Kosky. We're actually looking to put part of the profits from the festival into a film grant to help local filmmakers to be able to make their films, or as a seed fund to start film incentive programs.
I think that you'll find that Ministry of Culture is going in to put in a more coherent and cohesive framework for the film industry. We've been meeting, and in fact, I had asked Dr. Greenidge to met with the Paramount Pictures head and Disney head and others, and we've asked them to put together the range of things that we need to have in place. As you know, Netflix did some filming here with one of their programs, I think Outer Banks.
Outer Banks,
exactly.
My company was a part of that.
But what I'd like to invite you to do is to meet with Minister Monroe Knight.
Okay.
And to meet also with the NCF, and let us see how we can put together what it is you're doing, what it is catered to, and how we can best assist. Is that fair?
Yes, that is fair.
Okay. So I'll ask you to speak to, where's Ashanta? To speak with her and let her link you with Minister Monroe Knight. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, my dear. Who's next? Yes, Mr. Benskin. I haven't seen you for a while. How are you?
I'm still here. Good night, Madam.
You're still looking young.
Yeah, I have 3 concerns that I want to raise. We just got our gap fixed. Barrow Green, very nice, West Road. Yesterday, I come home and find the waterworks equipment dig up the nicely done Barrow Green Road. So 2 areas in West Road dug up. Coming out of my driveway now, I can hardly turn properly because that's where the water where it's just dig up.
But they don't have to reinstate it.
The rainfall, all the mire that they put in, down the gap. So if you go in West Road now, be a mile.
Mr. Leslie is making copious notes on behalf of the Water Authority, so fret not. Okay?
Right.
And these things happen. Because as I said, there are things that will burst that we have no control over because of the age of the mains that we're dealing with. But it hurts my heart when it happened because obviously smoothness now going to become smooth plus bumps to smooth.
Right. Another concern, in my driveway, I appreciate that the natural gas people come and put some natural gas in my driveway. But the driveway is very bad now since they did that. And if they get some, the material that they dig off the ground and put it in the driveway, I'm satisfied. I didn't want a Barbara Green.
Carol, I believe that the rehabilitation of that work should be done during the course of next week. Yesterday, I would have spoken with Mr. Philip Trudeau, who's not here tonight. He's the Deputy Chief Technical Officer, and I know that he has been in conversation with the people at NPC with a view to fixing the situation.
Yes, right. The last 2 points now. Up by Good Shepherd School, since the road has been fixed, and Cambridge Park, there was a crossing to indicate to the drivers in that area where to stop. Since the surface was done, the marking is gone. The people come down from Good Shepherd School as they like, which make it difficult to come off of Cambridge Park. So that signage should be replaced.
I think both the Parliamentary Secretary and the Deputy Prime Minister have heard, and they'll try and do the best to make sure that the depot can deal with the signage, correct?
Right. And lastly, in the ridge, up the hill from there, lost the thoughts. Anyhow, that area, since it was dug up for the placing of the natural gas.
You mean Kent Ridge?
Kent Ridge Park.
Yes, that is also part of the work that they were discussing yesterday with a view to starting this week, or, well, they had said they would try to start tomorrow, but if it doesn't happen, then it's supposed to happen on Monday.
Yeah, because it's very bad. Okay, thank you.
We had said 2. You would like me to extend beyond the 2?
Could you please? I would really appreciate it.
Let us be the last, and let me explain why. When we leave here, all of us got to go and load cabinet papers and read them and digest them before 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. So
I promise to be extremely brief.
You understand? And then if you're like me, eat it.
I'm a resident of St. James South, specifically the Husband's Gardens area. My name is Jamelia Neal. There's a play park right there in Husband's Gardens. Towards the back entrance of that play park, there's an area that has been fenced off some years ago. Apparently they discovered, so I heard, a cave of some sort there. When NCC cleans the park, they don't clean in that fenced off area. They haven't done anything since they fenced it off, and it is overrun with rats. Occasionally we'll throw
I hear you.
Rat poison over there.
Unacceptable. I hear you.
So my very brief comment is, could we get someone to clean up that area, bait it and so on, so that we don't have to deal with those rats in that area? I apologize for not raising it with the parliamentary representative
you don't
before,
have to
but
apologize. That's what these 4 are for. We will raise it with Minister tomorrow morning, Minister Ford, and make sure that the NCC cleans it. There was another area, any of you go over the Bridge Road and see that all through the years, for decades, it was all bare bush out there? You know what I mean?
Bridgewood?
When you leave in.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's
yeah,
in Michael, on both sides of the road, the back of Glenderry then, coming across. You see how nowadays it's kept in good order? Right. So sometimes you just have to let people know. Okay?
Okay. The other thing, one other quick thing, sorry. There's a trench there in opposite Petria Gardens in St. James. The gentleman here was just telling me, and I just wanted to, our discussion, he was saying that he's getting, because of the work they did there, all of the water is coming into his home and flooding his home. So this.
The same gentleman
Yeah.
behind there. So issues can be resolved, but we need to bring it to an end because in fairness, I gotta let the public servants go home as well, and the ministers also go home, especially with the weather tonight. So if you can, sir, just go by my assistant once again there, and she will take the information from you, okay?
Thank you very much,
Thank you,
Madam
sir.
Prime Minister.
Thank you, ma'am. Roy?
Okay, all that is left for me to do now is to say to you all, thank you very much for expressing your concerns. Part of my responsibility is to follow up with every last every last comment that was made tonight, believe it or not. So that's what my entire day tomorrow is going to entail. Some of you will get a call from me if there's a need for clarification. Some of the public officers will also get a call from me if there's a need for further intervention. But I think it would be a little remiss of me if I left here, having been here since 12 o'clock today, benefiting from the comfort of the staff here at the Frederick Smith School, if I didn't say thank you to them for hosting us, but also to make note of the fact that if you press on the tiles under you too hard, you'll realize that some water will come out. That's because we were all sat in here today and the area flooded out. So to the Minister of Education who's sitting over on the far left, I think there are some challenges here at Frederick Smith that since we've been here as they've treated us so well, that we need to return the favor and look at some of the issues that they do have in the area. The staff room, there was flooding, water coming through the roof and such like. So this is my chance to represent them. With that having been said, good night to everyone. Please travel safely, and we will see the next one of these events will be in Christchurch. We will set the date and make it known to everyone.